embarrass someone. Stamp. Right? I go to the ring and I embarrass you ring while you ring stop. That's how you with the military. What's the kind of getting embarrassed while you're sleeping? Like, you don't know about it. So, I mean, you ring sleep and I believe she was on the show earlier. Let me sleep. So let's just say, interesting enough, I can tell you this. So we never woke up to realize the embarrassing that you're causing. So what's the halacha? I show you your statement is I'm tired. Now, what's it? Who am I tired? Rashi says that she actually read it plus tired. The mitzvah shubano, tired, nani lo. It's interesting enough, a lot of myself, I'm obligated to take protests to the Paris, right, to the hospital, because they were embarrassed to attack you. It wasn't really secret, right? But a lot of myself, even if you go ahead and to embarrass someone who's dead, just so I do it. Now, why are we doing this over here? Because you know what to say, that if Yaakov goes over to Apple and puts him, but touches him, but Yaakov's not going to be tired. Why not? Why not? Because he hit first a dead man. He first a dead man. So what he's thinking there, that he's going to do something to someone, and that person quote-unquote is dead. They never realize it. It's reliability. Ra'alaya, if I embarrass someone while they're sleeping, and they never wake up, they never wake up, I'm still liable to go ahead and get embarrassed. Offspring. I'm going to ask, you know, what is over here? You say, oh, I'll pass it over, shut up. What happens? Well, again, the interview to Avram is an interview that's not covered. Therefore, again, there's no liability. Right? The damage is less than people. Also, again, there's going to be no liability. So you must have the Hammer of the Army, the Hammer of the Resident, the car culture, so I think I love that. I believe that even if you injure someone, you invite to hit someone, you cause an injury that's less for Sharakuta, while it's true that there's no monetary compensation, you get notice, which you might say, like, my part of the trauma, what do you know to say that if Yaakov goes over to Avram, he's stuck on the first Avram, they don't look at his Potter. What does that mean, Potter? Potter, you know it. I mean, there's supposed to come over and do a monetary compensation, but the rich place is Marcus. In this world, you can know tired at the moment. That's a psycho, that sounds over here, that it's so wicked at the moment. It's strange, with the hello, but you know, fucking on is a deal. Everyone knows what it means is kind of just means everyone has different liability. Kind of just means you're liable. So a son will have one type of liability. Like Yaakov, another unrelated party, will have his own liability. And the after every kind of the father, will say, so why is it that another will be puppet? Like, that will change. How many things can them together? Yaakov comes along and strikes him or curses him. Why is it that Yaakov is puppet? John Michal, the Nasi Ba'amka Losar. As it says really again, a prince amongst the people, you shall not curse. What do we learn from here? All say Nasi Ba'amka. Well, only when it was the winner for this person of the Jew, where he is the Amka. The Amka means he's part of Father's God. He behaves like another Jew. But I think he's the 90% of his results. What I'm getting to see, they're not behaving in conformance with the moral standards of Father Israel, and therefore again, the evil prohibitions of curse such an individual. You might say, okay, how can this call? So I understand cursing. So I am supposed to say, now by the way, he's actually very important, because what he's telling you is the prohibition to curse another Jew is only when they behave like a Jew. Like, only when ultimately from only when they are behaving, when they are conducting themselves like the Jew should. So the Gemara says, how can a fellow, you know, what about hitting someone? Like, what about hitting someone? How can we compare ultimately hitting the person. However, just like persons, only applies to Amfa, and the person is conducting themselves within moments of learning of these standards. So hitting applies as well. So what's the best case that should apply for a son? Therefore, even when this stuff, right, if Adam person got to death, that means that what? Adam is not conducting himself to Amfa like another father. So if he's not conducting himself like another father, then I lost all myself. There's no prohibition to him or to the person. And therefore the son should be exempt as well. This is very well said. Gemara says, "The Amar King goes to Sha'asa Tshuva." So what's the case? The case where Avram did Tshuva. Avram finished condemned to death, but he did Tshuva before his execution. Hakanami did Sha'asa Tshuva. So once I saw again, Avram did Tshuva, then what? He is included back in Amchot, and therefore again his son is not permitted to person or privilege. So that's it. This is what the Talmud Gemara on the right. So first of all, what do you see from here? You see from here that halacha on myself, you can halacha on myself. You can do Tshuva for one, literally again until the end. And for that one, right, to look at Tshuva. Even if the person is on the deathbed, they have the ability to perform Tshuva. So as a result of this genetic case, Avram is sent to death. Avram will be again being let out to be executed. But the possibility and the window to Tshuva still opens the moment that he is such is the power of Tshuva, the ability to affect changes in oneself or in one's life, literally until your last breath. That's the power of Tshuva. Well, that's another thing. So let's say it's like, he's about Tshuva. He's about Tshuva. What should we do? What should we do? What should we do? Say the execution. Send it back home. Well, see, listen, just because a person does Tshuva doesn't necessarily mean that you can undo the effect of all of the actions. Sometimes you do things in life, so often you do things in life, and there are irreversible consequences. You behave a certain way, especially for a proper amount of time. You can't simply undo that. And this is the incredible dialectic of Tshuva. On one hand, Tshuva itself can really undo everything, right? As Mike Tshuva says, you do the highest ever single Merkel Shem Avot, even the donos not supposed to be even your intentional ability to become like mitzvahs. That is true in the spiritual realm. In the physical realm, sometimes the things that I do cannot be undone. There are realities of our actions, realities of our circumstances. You see this all the time as a human relationship. When it's so often that we offend someone, we punch someone, this is happening a lot, especially in the context of marriage. Right, do something that is terribly hurtful and destructive, and then what happens? Because let's say it happens to you with your friend and party, let's say 5 years old, right? Let's say the person is holy. Then what happens? The husband owns it, and he understands that he was wrong, and he takes nothing to do. He says, "You're sorry." Now, it's interesting, something like the solution is that with an unsorry, what happens? It's like a magic wand, right? Like magic erase marker, right? I thought that I'm sorry, because genuinely, even like a little kid in the corner of my eye, I'm really sorry. It's interesting that sometimes the hypothetical husband thing that turned everything is just like snapped back to what it was, right? Like everything is fine. And then the hypothetical husband realizes that, wow, like not everything is snapping back to what it was. It's also because, again, our actions have consequences. Our actions have reactions. And when you hurt someone, when you hurt someone, then they accept your apology. But it doesn't come to the point. It's all there. There are consequences to our actions. And this is one of the most important struggles to live with your life. And this is why, again, living with mindfulness, living with the consequences, contemplating that the effect and the conclusions of our actions before we do it is so incredibly important. Because understand everything I do has a reaction. And even though I realize the error in my ways and I want to pull it back to see everything may be about Tshuva. Everything may be about Tshuva. And what's going to happen after I'm going to finish about Tshuva? What's going to happen if everything is stadium? But then the stadium? Incredible. But then I get purpose. Like, in other words, that's easy to undo. That's it. You did something, and the irreversible set of consequences. It's not substance emotion. You are about Tshuva. And in Shemayim, they will absolutely accept you with open arms and a grace about Tshuva. But we're still going to execute. Because we're right when you make certain decisions, there are irreversible consequences. I will say, how often do we do certain things thinking that's what I'm not a big deal? I just kind of dial it back afterwards. And then you do it, and you can't dial it back. And I'm stuck with the consequences. Tshuva always possible. But the undoing the reaction, or the reaction of my actions, often cannot be undone. Incredible use of. We must be healthy. And that's just how I'm thinking about this. Now, it's not even not saying that like this. You want to know why Yitzchak, his son, decided if he hits or he curses his father? Because father came about this. He's out of the truth. But that's because out of the truth. You have to, how can I know? There's someone else can also be liable for hitting and for cursing Avram. I'm not married, but I'm the call and the finish of that. I'm very interested. When you try it, I love the rest for cursing or hurting another Jew. But let's look again. It's a really going to live. Meaning, again, let's put this back to the idea that somebody has been condemned to death. Ultimately, I love that almost as if they're already dead. It's as if they're dead. So therefore, again, it's hard to really liability for someone who's dead. Right? A son is a different obligation. Right? The son is a son. And the son always has an umbrella again. Having somebody called the Asimuka has nothing to do with whether or not their parents is a good parent or not. It's not really important. Okay, a parent is a good parent, not a good parent, doesn't make a difference. I'm obligated to go ahead and have couples for them. So your parents is like, you know, obligated to get to death. A son does an obligation to honor his parents. But the rest about everyone else, obligated to get to death. I should say liability for dead guys. You know, please remember, if that's just against their son's supposed to be, for example, let's say I'm engaged, we need to hardly do after these sons. See these people say, Halach when I say, no, they just different. We'll get to this as well. Remember, there are elements of people's Ava'im that are in effect soon after the parent dies. As we're going to see, for example, one is now, again, you can hit your parents after their death because there's no permission in the court. Right? But the myself, you can't hurt your parents after their death. Because therefore, the color of the emo applies even after the death of a parent. So you see from here, and it's fascinating. Even if you look at Avram as a dead man, right, because he was sentenced to death, even so, personally, would fully bother me. But the same person that parents as well. There's a lot to say about this, about the concept of the own, even after death, transcends after death, right? This is why Allah again, this is one of the interesting ideas. Saint Titus is one of the forms of people of the age. Like a lot of things, like their father says, parents say to their child, I don't want you to say Titus for me after I die. That's what it is, that parent says, but even the child obligated to go ahead and honor that request, because they dispense with that request. There are a lot of titles like this in halacha, about when a parent asks for something, that there's contrary to halacha. People are not going to contrary here, is that the obligation, the fact that it's a shayla, indicates to us that people are even beyond that. So you might not have yara. Okay, very interesting conversation. By the way, I hope you remember how this all started. What was the shayla? What was the shayla? Right? Yitzchak worked for Beijing, his father, ultimately again, for Malchus, or for Kala, can the son go ahead and administer that particular program? Right? Or ultimately again, which is similar. So it's like Avram is being let out to death, and he's Yitzchak the son of Kaius, if he hits the most to purchase it. It's so funny, one of the certain examples is certainly personally Yitzchak. Right? Because the Maisa, again, the Maisa, personally the parents after their death is also allowed there. The certain is actually physically breathing. So now they're also allowed there. I mean, all about it, so you tell us to do it, right? L'chol ina ben nashik area. Also in the Talmud, there was a general halacha of himself. Son is not allowed to first and hit his father, even if the son is doing so in the capacity of an agent of grace. That's how halacha can first and second of the information is one exception. This means the Torah, on the Torah, the Shachmo was the Kasal, the little one exception. That's one exception. That Adam the father was involved in inciting others to worship Avodah Zarah, then the son is permitted to go ahead and hit him, curse him, carry out the punishment of basic, which means that once somebody is inciting others to worship Avodah Zarah, you definitely fall the punishment. I'm not in a general sense. So by the way, that is the halacha as brought down in the letter. Again, so the other husband, this was actually so how you other people showing you let's say one carriage, but not necessarily good. Like over there, listen to this. After the Nishma Kina Mahaliga Biyosime Hare, even if they're literally being let out to be executed, also know the Hakosam Umakala. You're not going to hit the parents, you're not going to hit the person. Then you can also call them Potter. Now, this is your person. If you miss them, or if you curse them, you're Potter. That's why you Potter. You're technically keeping your get away. That's giving us a Shiva, or they just I think the other part of it, I have to say to me, so let's say each father Aaron is being let out to be killed. First of all, that's even though he's a Rasha, each fuck still cares for you, each fuck still cares for you. If each fuck does kiss a person, each fuck is having a father, which I suggest a curse, a blood curse. Okay, if you get down and say, however, if Aaron did Shiva, and then each fuck subsequently being in person, each fuck is tired for hitting a person who's tired. Incredible. I thought he was something hard. Even though what? Even though you stuff is doing that, even though I'm being let out to kill, that's the rest about Shiva is about Shiva is about Shiva. And again, I'm not going to answer in I look for hate, I'm going to answer here. Also, other evil, I can also open my mouth, try to see after that. I mean, well, not the ocean, but in the type of music, where you see after the ocean, or you know, I want to say this is, I want to hate, I'm not confident that the sun is up, the next being eaten occasion to tell you as much as the carry out usually excommunication. Incredible. Okay, let's go back to Mishnah. Nothing is dead. I'm not the other than kind of actually answer behind the Kabbalah. But we actually alluded to this already in the last video. When you wish to left with the Kabbalah. If a person is with his father or mother, he will not carry unless the person causes an injury. So now to change the Kabbalah. Zehomer to Mekala Milamakes, so Mekala Akanis Akayik, or Makala Akanis Akayik. But the referral is that even though normally we group getting a person's parents together, there's a tendency that person has over the new, but really the only carries on the parents' life. Person and carries even when the parents is dead. Also incredible. Something about it, this is a very powerful lesson. It's easy, right? It's stuck with your father Adam, that gives you a God, that gives you a God. It doesn't give you a injury, not good, not because of the level of life. Only liability for taking the parent, then you tell the Kabbalah. That's your Kabbalah. Obviously, you know, Kilo, Lack, and so looking in the Pasuk says, obviously, you know, okay, colorless, other than most you must, obviously, you know, Kilo. So there's a redundancy in the Pasuk, right? The beginning of the Pasuk says, okay, color as others, the S, you know, God is one side, if a man will curse his mother and his father, most you must. He was put to death. Why? You know, Kilo got on both. He was put his mother and father. So why do you say the same thing twice? First, you know, it says the second other evil Kilo teaches me, lack of stuff. That his liability for person was carried even after death. Even after death, even after the parent died, still allowed to curse them. Listen to this. I would have thought, Holy of the Tide, and not sure of the Tide, and the Kalo, since the Bosai, the soul of God, and faith. Hitting and cursing, not in the Tide, and the Tide, on the Kalo in the Tide, and the Tide. If I just expecting the parents, there's only liability in the parents' life. So if you're cursing the parents, there's only liability in the parents' life. So if I get a bunch of extra praise, all this Kilo, he's getting liability for cursing parents, even once they are dead. Furthermore, Shabbat, there's a couple of Shabbat, Uma Maka, the Asababa Ampa, to the Ampa. We have to low fire and blow the eye. So furthermore, again, when it comes to Naka, when it comes to hitting someone, what does it mean? Also, blow the Ampa, to the Ampa. What it means is like this. It doesn't matter whether or not you ultimately again living with homeless with a dictator who is right or not. The viability for hitting them. The viability for striking any other group, you know, says. I'm sorry, לא כאן חומר. ומה אמרתי שאתה בצבא באנפות, לא חייבו לאחר מסך. But yet, again, it's not liability, especially this one after the day. The color שלא עושה בצבא באנפות ובאנפות, in the reason לא חייבו לאחר מסך. Because it comes from the color. Interestingly enough, the given of color is only for a Jew who needs a according to the dictates of Jewish law. And if somebody is not what we call it amchor, then halacha there is no liability for going ahead and purchasing them. Certainly, there should be no liability for asking them. On the Roma, all the Vidimo Kilo, black and stuff. You know, it's like extra things other than the Kilo, you can need a flood. There's liability for cursing a parent even after their death. That's all right. Finally, for the Vidimo, so that other Vidimo. Like I said, again, you see this advice in the film. First of all, son, federal phrase of every Vidimo Kilo is extra. Because it wasn't what I said before in the earlier part of the Pasuk that you can't curse the parent. What do I do with that last point of the Vidimo Kilo? That's when it's used as even after the death of the parent, there's going to be liability. There's out of Yoshia, my friend, I was thinking of Yoshia, who wrote that phrase is not extra. What is there to say? What are we talking about here? Here we go. Beside here. The Pasuk says, now again, look at the Pasuk is Asher Kalo as others best in. Why do you use this ish? Why not just say ish? Why ish? Not talking about it. Not talking about ish. The rabbi is back tumtum God judgment. Teaching that even if the father is a tumtum or a virtue, ultimately when there's no liability for the child for cursing the parent. Asher Kalo as others best in. Who will curse his mother and his father. I only know that the liability is to curse both your mother and your father. All the shalom, other than that. How do I know that there's liability either? If I curse my father without my mother without my father, which the Gemara says in Yunayim, Aroma, Ovid, Emo, Kilo. They don't have to say other than Emo, Kilo. Ovid, Kilo, Emo, Kilo. You see what's happening here? So Rabbi Yoshia uses that last
anything good about it? What is the best thing about it? It was right on the winner.
So what that makes it sound like the reading of that pasuk is there's only liability when you curse.
Yo, what the fuck, dog? Dog, sound like everybody said that shit. Nobody knew how to pronounce it though. Really? Oh, it's the worst.
Whenever the pasuk creates a grouping, the essence of the thing is, and even people mentioned together are still reckoned separately, unless the Torah places them together explicitly. What do you mean by this? Minore, this is very interesting. Can you know this? Minore, not for you in the color of the Emo, most Emos. The pasuk says, ultimately, again, from the color of the Emo, most Emos, and we find in the rabbi stop thinking God judgment. That's very bad to teach you. Talking about it doesn't think of it as a first line. You think of it as a sheep. During the upper sheep, you can talk about them about them. Point just talking like a normal way. And this is Homer from Makia, even the color. I said, why not tell the idea that there's a Tumra? The Makia is having the color also.
Dude, where can you fucking watch the Olympics?
So the Makia also goes to the Antop. By Makia was a retired to his own Jew. Whether the Jew is unfar enough, I'm from the time that's 18 in the color. Ultimately, again, but that's different than the color. Because on the color, you only try the first review of the Antop. A Sava, Makshin, Hakar, and the Lola. We go ahead and ultimately, again, you compare or we try Makshin, we compare the Halacha of Hakar to Lola. But just like Hakar, you're trying to go ahead and so the Lola, Lema, Honey tonight. It's the same piece of time like these other tonight. So what? Tani Chada, very interesting case over here. Kusi Ata Mitzvah Haka, so Yata Mitzvah Haka, Kusi. But let's say now, again, remember, Kusi in general, Kusi in Shas is used in one of two ways. Sometimes Kusi just means a guy. That's what it means, just means a guy. Kusi is the same as Haku. But in other terms, what Kusi refers to, are the Kusim. Who are the Kusim? Right? Remember again, the Shamanesha, the king of Ashur, exiled the 10 tribes. He had a good strategy. What was the strategy? His military strategy was, whenever you conquer a people, the first thing you do is uproot them from their natural homeland, and you sell them somewhere else. That makes it less probable that they will go ahead and rebel. Okay, so when you exile the 10 tribes, who do you put in their place? The Kusim. Where are the Kusim from? Kusa. Kusim were all Gabon Bazaar. There was an outbreak of lions, and they converted. There's a whole shaila about their conversion. Whether legitimate converts, not legitimate converts. So just bear that in mind. The answer is as follows. So Kusi after the Tzvah HaKav, then we have to talk to also. So Kusi, if you're Kusi, you're Chai. If you curse a Kusi, you're not Chai. Thank you, that's not advice. So we have to Tzvah HaKav, also ultimately by Kusi, you're not Chai. You're either getting in or for cursing him. Now the Gemara says, Savua, Kikulik Alma, Kusi, Gere, and Hussein, and listen, I have your sons for making this. Everyone assumes that the Kusi were legitimate Gere. Legitimate Gere. If that's the case, the Gemara says, so my love back with you. So what are they arguing about? So the Gemara said, I'm actually not called the Torah. One of the things is that you can try hitting someone, cursing someone, in Mars, and therefore you have liability. In Mars, too much in how many kids do you have? No, we treat them separately. You might say, well, not true. Everyone agrees. No much in Hakal, the Plama. We do not go ahead and compare hitting to cursing. The Hakal, the Hakal. So those are what we're arguing about here. Mar Sabatusim Giri Alayos. And they're saying, Mar Sabatusim Giri Alayos. I'm sorry. Mar Sabatusim Giri NSA. Mar Sabatusim Giri Alayos. What's the focus on our side? So the focus ultimately is Halakha Lamaisa. What's the nature of Kusim? What's Kusim? Giri Arayos means that Arayos is the power cannot be iron. Right? So they converted because of the lions. Those lions, therefore, they were not legitimate Giri. Other things is no, they were Giri Emes. Legitimate lions, legitimate Giri. So the Gemara says, Ihati, how do we turn Allah to show it to Israel? So let's say, so ultimately, I think if that's the case, then what do we say? That the shore of a Kusim is feel like the shore of a Yisrael, to which the Gemara answers, and Shmanino, that Kisha for Yisrael, rather than for any Yisrael, what is the focus? And the focus ultimately is, do you compare Hakah to Klala or not? That is the fundamental focus of the over here. So let's say, so just Halakha Lamaisa, just in the same takeaways from here. So Halakha Lamaisa, what we're asking is that Hakah and Kala are treated differently. Like that, for example, there is the din of cursing one's parent, or there's a purpose of cursing one's parent, even after their death. But Halakha Lamaisa, again, Hakah, like striking, does not apply after the death of the individual. Like after the death of the parent. So if you're able to wrap back to the last piece, we'll take on the rest of tomorrow.
Hi, everybody. So I've been thinking about my celebrity doppelganger, and I finally found it. It's the nerd emoji. Yeah, I've been a nerd for a really long time. Back when the internet asked women one question, you probably know. Was it hot? Were you hot? Or were you not? Yeah, I was on a scale of 1 to 10. And I was a 9.
All right, so we'll
Yeah,
say
don't laugh. I was 9 years old.
good morning. Begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning. Sure to thank our Talmud Torah sponsor, our annual Talmud Torah sponsor, Kos Mishpacha Eretz Yisrael, for dedicating all the Shulman Joshua this year as a host for the Soros Tavos for Am Yisrael. Our Talmud Torah sponsors for Adar, Abalin, Latova, Terry, and Steve Zinn, in loving memory of Terry's father, Dr. Harry Kahn, Steve Hirsch, Ben Yosef Cohen on the occasion of his 12th yard site. The Ziv, Levin, and Berman families in memory of Mr. William Ziv, Zev Shmuel, Ben Yisrael, Shmuel Rafa, a week of learning sponsors, Paul and Kathy College, in memory of Paul's grandfather, Zachariah and Zachariah Shmuel Rafa. And our Gastronomy sponsors for today, Adam Bronco, in memory of Moshe Ben David or Moshe Feinstein, Zatzal, on the occasion of his yard site, the upbearing merit of our Talmud Torah. In the Shabbos of Aliyah, the families in the Hamas, from the rest of our hostages, and our holy soldiers should be successful before Maaseh Yedei. Was the that's for all this troubleshooting. everything that could possibly go wrong at 5:45 in the morning. I want to say, so let's begin. An incredible daf ahead of us today. Today's daf is page 85. We are up to a nurse we left off on page down on the page 84B, and we left off 6 lines up from the bottom. Of this time. So let's remember again, we're dealing with a very interesting case. The question that Gemara had is a son allowed to do bloodletting from his father? That was the fundamental shaila. Because on one hand, we discussed initially introduced us to the idea that if a son injures his father, he's chayiv chelek. So the shaila is, what happens if he goes ahead and he does bloodletting for his father? Is that permitted or not? So interestingly enough, we have two opinions, Rav Masno and Rabbi who both seem to say yes, but then the Gemara quoted two stories of Rav and Mar Braid Ravina who do not allow their children to take out a splinter, to lance a boil, for fear ultimately again of causing a chavura. So the Gemara goes on and says, the Hadisnan, 6 lines of the Hadisnan, Machat Shalyad, Lito Ba'asakobs. Let's remember again, this is now switching over to the Shabbos. So the Mishnah says as follows, that if you have a small hand, a small needle that's used for sewing, you're allowed to go ahead and move that on Shabbos. It's not muktzah. Why? Because ultimately, again, technically you use it to remove a splinter on Shabbos. 1 second, remove a splinter on Shabbos. Don't you have to be concerned that maybe in that, again, technically speaking, there's nothing wrong with removing a splinter on Shabbos. What's the concern? The concern is that you may cause a greater injury. The causing of a greater injury, especially one that draws blood, ultimately, again, is an Isser D'Oraisa. So what do you do? I'm sorry. Maybe you'll cause an injury. And again, although it'll be a shogi, it's not an intentional chavura, but nevertheless, it's a shogi of skila, which the Gemara says, no. That's different, because if there is a chavura that's caused by taking out of the splinter, that's in the kalko. That's considered to be a destructive act. So the Gemara says, so that's not according to the opinion that says the kalko is pater. That in general on Shabbos when you do something destructive, that is pater. According to the opinion that says the kalko is chayiv, even if you do something destructive on Shabbos, a malacha is a malacha. What is there to say? Which verse is going to say, "Man Shabbos he done the kalko by chabura chayiv." Who's the opinion that says that the kalko by chabura, that if you cause a chabura and it's killful and it's destructive, that's your chayiv. That's Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon Amar Kamalacha Shemifika Legufa Patrala. Rabbi Shimon is also the opinion who says that any malacha Shemifika Legufa, which means any malacha that is done that is not needed for its intended purpose. In other words, that the malacha that results, that's not the malacha that I want, he holds that your pater. Okay? So the word goes off. So bottom line, by the way, so what happens in that kind of situation? The word is just suggesting that even if you end up causing a chabura by taking out the splinter, that'll be a malacha shemifika legufa. In general, both say for Shabbos. What do you call for Shabbos? Malachas machshavas. You need something constructive and premeditated. If at the end of the day you do a malacha, but the malacha itself is not necessary, then ultimately again it's not after Shabbos. So that being said, you don't sleep, you don't take out splinters on Shabbos. You read splinters on Shabbos, splinters after Shabbos, out of a fear ultimately again of a darish and a miscaving, even though it's malacha shemifika legufa, you still don't go ahead and do it on Shabbos. But coming back to our previous sugya, what about a son doing bloodletting for fathers? Rabbi says this is a big shaila. In other words, again, I mentioned in share yesterday, that in all of these cases where you have a son checking the blood sugar for his father, a son going out and being a doctor and operating on his father, doing this procedure. So what's the halacha? So the Shulchan Aruch Paskins in Hilchot, there's a whole section called Hilchot Kibud Avayim. Fascinating halachos. In Yeridea, so in Reish Mem Aleph. So the Shulchan Aruch says as follows. Reish Mem Aleph Gimel. Ramah Gimel. Shulchan says as follows. Let's say again, my father has a splinter. Father has a splinter. The Shulchan Aruch says, Lo Yotzi Enu Shema Yavor La'asos Bo Chabura. A son should not take out the splinter, lest it come to cause his father to bleed. Again, it will make his dam, or rofe. Let's say the son is doing bloodletting, or the son is a doctor. lo yakiz dam lo aviv lo yachsif lo eder, afaf mishum achavim le'ifiyah. A son should not do anything to a father that cause bleeding, even if the intention is for refuah purposes. So I say that, but I think a very important qualifier. Haga, when is this true? When is this true? When there is someone else to go ahead and provide the quote-unquote service for the father. About an ancient akar lasos, who mitztayer, harei makor makizo, the chotek kafima she'eshu lasos. So it's interesting enough, if there's no one else there, then the son could do it. The son could do it. But Shlomo is a very interesting qualifier. He says, kafima she'eshu lasos. He has to get the choice from his father. Fascinating. So in other words, the lechatziva is that a son should not do these things for his father. Like that's the lechatziva. Like if the evidence is no one there, a son could do it. But really, he should get the choice from his father before going ahead and doing anything that's going to cause a chabura or cause the drawing of blood. Incredible. And I want to say, he's also presupposes that the father is in mental capacity to give the son to the father. Let's say again, the father is not of the mental capacity. The son is the caregiver who's there. And again, but I'm not saying it's understood. It's understood that although ideally, better to have someone other than the son for the needs. But again, if there's no one else there, even if the father can't give, it shows the son is the okay, good. We'll come back with more of this. Not a little bit later on today. So it's like top of pay, 85A, second line there. Very interesting. One million medications. Yes, the concept of Jesus. Then, not the answer, also with a color. Wow, listen to this. Can the son be an agent of the court to strike his father or to curse his father? Now, what is this? If you look at Rashi, Rashi has the Shliach Rashi says, Bezdin La'aviv, in this height of the Nidui Umalchus. So what we're seeing now, the question is like this. Let's say again, we have, right, Avram and Yitzchak, Avram is the son. Avram was condemned by Bezdin to represent. He was judged by Bezdin to Malchus, to get lashes. Or Avram was going to be put in excommunication. Remember again, so now the title is, let's say Yitzchak, the son, is employed by the Bezdin. So can Yitzchak go ahead and carry out these sentences against his father? So again, it's not the son acting of his own volition, it's the son acting as a shliach HaBezdin. The Gemara says, Amalei, la'achamiyet, so the Gemara asks the question in general, right? Why is, let's say Avram and Yitzchak are not related. Avram is judged for Avram is judged for the excommunication. By the way, say part of excommunication was a curse. You would get cursed by Bezdin. So Gemara says you're never allowed to do this to another Jew. So can you go over to another Jew and spot them? Can you go over to another Jew and curse them? You're not allowed to. Gemara says someone else stam another Jew. How are they permitted to flog someone? How are they permitted to curse someone? This is beautiful. Ella, kavod shamayim is ugly. That's what I was saying. So why is it that Bezdin in general, right? Anyone in Bezdin is allowed to flog another Jew, curse another Jew? Because kavod shamayim ugly. Because the covet that we are obligated to display to HaKadosh Baruch Hu trumps any other covet. That's it. So therefore, again, if someone did something against HaKadosh Baruch Hu and they're deserving of Malchus, we're going to flog them. We're going to flog them. If someone is deserving ultimately of Nidra, we're going to curse them. But it's an affront to the dignity of the individual. The covet to HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes and comes before the covet of any other person. Hakanami, kvod shmayla. That's the logic that ultimately, again, a son should be able to go ahead and flog his father, or a son should be able to go ahead and curse his father for Nidui as well. So okay, that's the Gemara is assuming right now. So may say, Uma mi shemetzuva lakoso mitzvah shelo lakoso, mi she'ina mitzvah lakoso in adin shemetzuva shelo lakoso. So what's the so a little bit of a strange brayso, which a lot of things. So literally translated, if someone who I'm obligated to strike, there's a mitzvah not to strike them. Someone who I'm not obligated to strike, certainly there's a mitzvah not to strike them. All right, so no idea what the Bible is talking about. So Gemara says, "My love, idi v'makom mitzvah." So perhaps both cases in the Bryce are talking about makom mitzvah, where someone was deserving of malchus. I see if someone who's deserving of lashes, and what happens? Habit no, haba'achar. Maybe one Bryce is talking about a son, and one Bryce is talking about someone else. In other words, and the Bryce is saying like this: when it's the son, even though the father is deserving of malchus, Nevertheless, the son should not administer to the father. And versus someone else, where ideally you really shouldn't be hitting any Jew, but when you're working for Beis Din, and Beis Din is obligated to give a person malchus, so someone else is permitted to administer it. To which the Gemara says, "Lo, idi v'idi loshna b'no v'loshna acha." The Gemara says, "No, not true. Doesn't make a difference whether we're talking about a son or talking about someone else." V'lo kasha, kan b'makom mitzvah, kan shelo b'makom mitzvah. One is talking about makom mitzvah, and one is talking about not a makom mitzvah. What does that mean? About say, so what does that mean? Makom mitzvah, not makom mitzvah. So the pashtus, what's makom mitzvah? Makom mitzvah is where someone is chayiv malchus from Beis Din. Shelo b'makom mitzvah means someone's not chayiv malchus in Beis Din. So someone's chayiv malchus in Beis Din. As much as we don't like hitting people, you're going to hit them because it's a mitzvah. Someone's not chayiv malchus, you're not going to hit them because halacha l'maisa. Halacha l'maisa is prohibited. So the Gemara says, this is what it means to say. Here we go. Uma b'makom mitzvah shemitzvah lahakoso mitzvah. Mitzvah shlo lahakoso. So it says, listen to this. Even in the case of makom mitzvah, in the case of makom mitzvah, let's take this. Right? Avram ultimately again is chayiv malchus. Avram's chayiv malchus. So now Yitzchak, let's even leave aside that Yitzchak is his son, not his son. Let's leave that on the side. Yitzchak is going to administer the malchus. Even in that case, what is the halacha? Yitzchak is not permitted to deliver more than the mandated number of malchus. Right? There's an issue to flog someone even one more lash than they are chayiv for. So that's what it means when it says ma b'makom mitzvah. Even in the case where a person is liable to lashes, right? Shemitzvah lahakoso, mitzvah shelo lahakoso. There is a mitzvah not to give them any more lashes than they are liable to. Shelo b'makom mitzvah, when someone is not liable to lashes. So the Gemara says, shelo b'makom mitzvah, she'eno mitzvah lahakoso, eno din shemitzvah shelo lahakoso. So it's only where someone is not subject to lashes, then halacha l'maisa, don't strike them at all. Okay, so we'll say, so therefore again, that's how the Gemara ends off. Now, by the way, what do we do with this halacha? So the pashtos. Well, we're not finished. Let's finish up first. Tashma. So we'll say, so remember again, keep your eye on the ball. What's the primary shiloh over here? So we've already established about a son administering medicinal healing to his father that could potentially result in a chabur. That was topic number 1 for today. Topic number 2 for today. Can a son carry out the punishment of Beis Din upon his father if the son is working for Beis Din? Is that mutter or not? So that still seems to be up in the air. So the Gemara continues. Tashma. Hayotze v'harei. Listen to this. Avram was condemned to death. Avram the father was condemned to death. Uba v'no v'iko v'kilalo chayiv. And what happens? And his son comes along and hits him or curses him. The son is chayiv. All right. So the Gemara says, if another person comes along and hits or curses Avram, so the other person is going to be potter. All right, so what's going on over here? So the Gemara says as follows. So the Gemara says, so again, one more time. Avram is condemned to death. The Gemara says, if Avram's son Yitzchak comes and strikes him or curses him, so the son Yitzchak is going to be liable. All right, if someone else other than Yitzchak comes and curses or hits Avram, they won't be liable. So the Gemara says, we asked, why this distinction? Right? Why this distinction ultimately again between the son and someone else? It's very interesting. Okay, so this is fascinating. So we'll say, what's the case? Avram was condemned to death. Remember again, we spoke about earlier in this episode, about the process for leading someone out to death, specifically again by skila. And again, went through that whole process of leading them out. What's the case? The case that Avram was condemned, but he won't go. Which makes a lot of sense. Right? He won't go. Right? He won't go. So therefore, what do we need to do? We need to prod him. So how do you prod him? You hit him. Right? Or you curse him, so the Gemara says. So that therefore the Gemara seems to be making this distinction as following. If the son hits him or curses him, the son will be liable. If someone else hits him or curses him, they won't be liable. So the Gemara says, Rav Sheshes Mukila, B'she'in Misarvin Bo Lotzeis. Rav Sheshes sets it up as no, it's not a case of where he's refusing to go out. If that's the case, they're not refusing to go out. So let's say, again, if we're talking about a case where Avram was condemned to death, he's refusing to go out to meet his maker, right? He's refusing to go out for execution. So now, okay, the Gemara says, if his son hits him or curses him, there's liability for the son. If someone else does it, there's not liability. Okay, but Shisha says, no, it's talking about a case where he's not unwilling to go. He's willing to go. Right? He's willing to go. He's willing to go. If that's what he's willing to go, then at the end of the day, if someone else comes along and hits him or curses him, why is there not liability for the other? To which the Gemara says very simple. So let's say, remember, this is very important. When Avram is condemned to death, what's his status? What's his status? He's considered to be dead. All right, right? Let's take a different case. Someone, right? Avram is condemned to death by David, and then Yaakov comes along and kills Avram. What's Yaakov's liability? Zero. Why? He killed a dead man. He killed a dead man. So halacha l'maisa, the Gemara says like this: when Avram's being condemned to death, so if someone else comes along and hits Avram, curses Avram, okay, there's no liability because they hit and they cursed a dead man. If the son does it, there is liability. Again, I must say, this is all the heightened level of relationship responsibility that a child has to a parent. Avram's been condemned to death, you're right, but if you're stuck, it's still your father, and he's still living and breathing right in front of you, and therefore, again, you have an obligation to maintain proper dignity towards him. Gemara says as follows. Gemara says, "V'hamra Sheshas, Baish is an interesting case here. Baishu Yoshan Meis Chayiv." So let's listen to this fascinating case here. Let's say you embarrass someone. Just stab. Right? I go over to Ruvain and I embarrass Ruvain while Ruvain is dying. That's right, while Ruvain is sleeping. Right? Ruvain is sleeping. So I say, so what's the kind of getting embarrassed while you're sleeping? Right? You don't know about it. So I don't know, Ruvain's asleep and I put toothpaste on his face, whatever it is. Right? I go ahead, right? He's sleeping. Someone says, interestingly enough, and he dies in his sleep. So Ruvain never woke up to realize the embarrassment that's been caused him. So what's the halacha? I show Yashin Mace Chayiv. I'm Chayiv. Now, both say, who am I Chayiv? And Rashi says over here, she's actually right across Chayiv. He's Baishin Banov, Bahai Nani Loshna. So as I say, interestingly enough, halacha myself, I'm obligated to pay Moshes to the heirs, right, to Ruvain's offspring, because they were embarrassed in sacrifice. What do you see from here? That halacha l'maisa, even if you go ahead and you embarrass someone who's dead, there's still liability. Now, why are you bringing this up over here? Because the Gemara wanted to say that if Yaakov goes over to Avram and hits him or curses him, that Yaakov's not going to be chayiv. Why not? Because he hit or he cursed a dead man. Hit or he cursed a dead man. But what do you see from here? That even if you do something to someone and that person, quote unquote, is dead, they never even realize it, there's still liability. If I embarrass someone while they're sleeping and they never wake up, I'm still liable to go ahead and pay for the embarrassment of the offspring. What's the case over here? Where what happens? Where again the injury to Avram is an injury that's not shava pruta. So therefore, again, there's no liability, right? For damages less than a pruta, ultimately, again, there's going to be no liability. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Ami, Rabbi Yochanan, but we learned that even if you injure someone, and you commit someone, and you cause them an injury that's less than a shava pruta, while it's true that there's no monetary compensation, you get notice. To which the Gemara says, you're right. My part of the Ka'amar, what does it mean when we say that if Yaakov goes over to Avram and he struck or he cursed Avram, that ultimately he's Potter? What does that mean, Potter? Potter, Mimaman. It means that he's Potter from Mammon. There's no monetary compensation. But there would potentially be Malchus. Michlal did no Chayiv Mammon. So again, does that sound like over here that his son would be Chayiv Mammon? It should be strange. To which the Gemara says, Ella, the Dino, Hachanami the Dino. Rather, but say no. What it means is chayiv just means everyone has different liability. Chayiv just means you're liable. So a son will have one type of liability, right? Yaakov, another unrelated party, will have his own liability. So I say, so why is it that another will be potter, right? If Yaakov comes, Avram's been condemned to death, and Yaakov comes along and strikes him or curses him. Why is it that Yaakov is potter? The Amritra. V'nasi ba'amcha lo sar. The pasuk says literally again, a prince amongst your people, you shall not curse. What do we learn from here? Ba'osei ma'isa amcha. Well, only when is there a prohibition to curse another Jew? When he is ba'amcha. Ba'amcha means he is part of Klal Yisrael. He behaves like another Jew. But obviously, if someone has been sentenced to death, what does that indicate? They're not behaving in conformance with the normative standards of Klal Yisrael, and therefore, again, there is no prohibition to curse such an individual. The Gemara says, okay, hatinach klala. So I understand cursing. So what's this? Now, by the way, this is actually very important because what this is telling me is the prohibition to curse another Jew is only when they behave like a Jew. Right? Only when what we call osen ma'isa amcha. Only when they are behaving, when they are conducting themselves like a Jew should. So the Gemara says, hatinach klala. Haka minalei. What about hitting? What about hitting someone? Right? What about hitting someone? Haka minalei. We compare ultimately hitting to cursing. And therefore, just like cursing only applies to Amcha when the person is conducting himself in conformity with normative Jewish standards, so Tzvaka hitting applies as well. So we'll say if that's the case, then the same thing should apply for a son. So therefore, even when Yitzchak, right, if Avram has been condemned to death, that means that what? Avram is not conducting himself to Amcha like a member of Klal Yisrael. If he's not conducting himself like a member of Klal Yisrael, then halacha myself, there should be no prohibition to hit him or to curse him. And therefore, the son should be exempt as well. This is incredible. I'll say, Gemara says, what's the case? The case is where Avram did tshuva. Avram's been condemned to death, but he did tshuva before his execution. Hachanami bisha asa tshuva. Shavuot says, so again, if Avram did tshuva, then what? He is included back in Amcha, and therefore again, his son is not permitted to curse him or to hit him. Shavuot said, this is a profound Gemara on a variety of levels. So first of all, what do you see from here? You see from here that halacha l'maisa, you could do tshuva until when? Literally again until the end. Like the Rambam writes in Hilchos Tshuva, even if a person is on their deathbed, they have the ability to perform tshuva. So let's just in this dramatic case, Avram's been sentenced to death. Avram is literally again being led out to be executed. But the possibility and the window to tshuva is still open literally until the moment that he is executed. Such is the power of tshuva, the ability to affect change in oneself or in one's life, literally until your last breath. That's the power of tshuva. What's lesson number 2? Don't say things here yourself, oh, he's about tshuva. That's right. If he's about tshuva, then what should we do? Stay the execution. Send it back home. What else do you see? Those are just because the person does tshuva doesn't necessarily mean that he's under the effect of all of that. Sometimes we do things in life, or often we do things in life, and there are irreversible consequences. You behave a certain way, especially for a protracted amount of time, you can't simply undo that. And this is the incredible dialectic of tshuva. On one hand, tshuva itself can really undo everything, right? Like the Imam says, that if you do the highest level of tshuva, the Imam calls tshuva me'ava, even zidonos na'as kizechuyos. Even your intentional awareness can become like mitzvos. That is true in the spiritual realm. In the physical realm, sometimes the things that I do cannot be undone. There are realities of our actions, realities of our circumstances. You see this all the time, like in human relationships. So, it could happen that we offend someone, we hurt someone, and we see this happen a lot, especially in the context of marriage, where I do something that is terribly hurtful and destructive, and then what happens? The person says, like, let's say it happens to be that the offending party is the husband. Let's say, for argument's sake, right? For illustrative purposes only. So then what happens? And a husband owns it, and he understands that he was wrong. He understands, so what does he do? He says, I'm sorry. Now, it's interesting. Often the husband's expectation is that with an I'm sorry, what happens? When I was like a magic wand, right? Like magic erase marker, right? I said, I'm sorry. It was genuine. There was like a little tear in the corner of my eye, right? I'm really sorry. And so it's interesting that sometimes the hypothetical husband thinks that suddenly everything that just like snaps back to to what it was. Like everything is fine. And then the hypothetical husband realizes that, wow, like not everything is snapping back to what it was. First and also because, again, our actions have consequences, and our actions have reactions. And when you hurt someone, they may even accept your apology, but it doesn't undo the pain. It's all there. There are consequences to our actions. And this is one of the most important struggles to live with in life. And this is why, again, living with mindfulness and living with attentiveness and contemplating about the effects and implications of our actions before we do is so incredibly and profoundly important, because to understand everything I do has a reaction. And even though I realize the error in my ways and I want to pull it back, you can't pull it back. It stays. Avram may be about tshuva. Everyone may be about tshuva. And what's going to happen after Avram becomes about tshuva? What's going to happen? What is the Beis Din going to say to him? What is the Beis Din going to say to him? Ashrecha. Incredible. But now we have to tell him. Like, in other words, that you can't undo it. In other words, that's it. You did something, and there's an irreversible set of consequences that you have set into motion. You are about tshuva. And in Shemayim, they will absolutely accept you with open arms as a great Baal tshuva. But we're still going to execute you. Because in life, when you make certain decisions, there are irreversible consequences. And I was like, how often do we do certain things thinking in the back of our mind it's not a big deal? I'll just kind of dial it back afterwards. And then you do it, and you can't dial it back. And I'm stuck with the consequences. Tshuva, always possible. But the undoing the reactions or the reactions of my actions often cannot be undone. Incredible yisod. So much that's the case that I was coming about Tshuva. So it's not really much setting it up like this. Do you want to know why Yitzchak, the son, is chayiv if he hits or he curses his father? Because his father came about tshuva. Because Avram did tshuva. If that's the case that Avram did tshuva, acher nani, then someone else should also be liable for hitting and for cursing Avram. So I'm Mari ba'amcha b'mekayim shel amcha. Very interesting. No. When you chayiv, halach l'maisa for cursing or for hitting another Jew, but ultimately again, it's a Jew who is going to live. Meaning, again, I want to say this all circles back to the idea that someone who has been condemned to death, ultimately, in halacha, is almost as if they're already dead. It's as if they're dead. So therefore, again, it's hard to really create liability for someone who's dead. Right? A son is a different obligation. Right? The son is a son. Right? The son always has an obligation. Remember again, has nothing to do with whether or not your parent is a good parent. It's incredibly important, right? In other words, my parent is a good parent, not a good parent, doesn't make a difference. I'm obligated to go ahead and have coverage for them. So with parents, we tell them, even though Avram is convicted to death, a son still has an obligation to honor his parent. But by everyone else, Avram is considered to be dead. It's hard to generate liability for a dead guy. If that's the case against the son, the example, I'll say, I'm a days. So no, here's the thing, I will get to this as well. Remember, there are elements of Kibud Avva'im that are in effect even after the parent dies. As we're going to see, for example, one is now, again, you can hit your parent after they're dead because there's no prohibition of hitting a corpse. Right? But Lamaisa, you can't curse your parent after they're dead. So, for example, right, Mikalo of the emo applies even after the death of a parent. So you see from here, and it's fascinating. Even if you look at Avram as a dead man, right, because he was sentenced to death, even so, cursing him, right, Yitzchak, his son, cursing him would still be prohibited, because you can't curse your dead parent as well. So I'll say, by the way, there's a lot to say about this, about the concept of people Avva'im even after death. It transcends after death, right? This is why halacha l'maisa again. This is one of the interesting ideas. Saint Kaddish is one of the forms of kibud Avva'im. There's a lot to discuss. Let's say a father says, a parent says to their child, I don't want you to say Kaddish for me after I die. A crazy case like that. The parent says, so is a child obligated to go ahead and honor that request, or could they dispense with that request? Yeah, a lot of shilas like this in halacha about when a parent asks for something, that runs contrary to halacha. Okay, but right now, the point over here is that the obligation, the fact that it's a shayla, indicates to us that kibbud avva'im extends even beyond death. To be more smile. Okay. Very interesting conversation. Bottom line, let's remember, how did this all start? What was the Shiloh? Like Yitzchak worked for Bezin, Yitzchak worked for Bezin. His father is Chayiv, ultimately again, for Malchus or for Klala, can the son go ahead and administer that particular prohibition, right? Or ultimately again, or Hayotzi Licharik, which is a similar case, right? Avram is being let out to death. Is Yitzchak the son Chayiv if he hits him or if he curses him? So, by the way, one thing we certainly established is certainly cursing him he is Chayiv for. Right? Because Lamaisa, cursing your parent after they're dead is also a liability. So certainly when he's actually physically breathing. So my house, what's the bottom line? So let's say, Amar Barakuna, the Tana of the day Rabbi Shmuel, Lakol Eina Ben Nasa Shliach Lakosa with the Kalalo. So we'll say, in general, Halacha Lamaisa, a son is not allowed to curse and hit his father, even if the son is doing so in the capacity of an agent of Beis Din. That's the halacha. Can't curse or anybody knows agent of Beis Din, with one exception. Chutz mimesis, Torah, Shahari Amar Torah, Tosachmo, Velosechasal. With one exception. What's the one exception? If Avram the father was involved in inciting others to worship Avodah Zarah, then Yitzchak the son is permitted to go ahead and hit him, curse him, carry out the punishment of Beis Din, which makes sense also because we've seen once somebody is inciting others to worship Avodah Zarah, we definitely throw the book at them in a general sense. Okay, so I'll say, so by the way, that is the halacha as brought down in Shabbat. Again, so in our conference, this was actually good. Grace Mem Aleph Taus. Listen to this. So the Gemara says, two halachas over here. So how you abid v'imo rishayim gimurim v'ovri avera. Let's say one's parents, the mamish rishayim gimurim, right over avera. So listen to this. Afilu nigmar kinam lahariga v'yotzim leharik. Even if they're literally being let out to be executed, asur lo lahakosam u'lekallah. You are not permitted to hit your parents. You're not permitted to curse them. Kimhika also a kolam potter. Now, interesting enough, for Christians, if you hit them or if you curse them, you're potter. Right? Why are you potter? Because technically speaking, you're dead already. Right? So let's say this is fascinating. So if one's parents, right? So let's say Yitzchak, right? Yitzchak's father Avram is being let out to be killed. First of all, that clearly indicates that he's a Rasha. Even though he's a Rasha, Yitzchak still can't hit him, Yitzchak still can't curse him. If Yitzchak does hit a person, Yitzchak is technically potter because he hit and cursed a dead person. Okay. Listen to this. Rambam says, however, if Avram did tshuva and then Yitzchak subsequently hit him in person, Yitzchak is chayiv for hitting and cursing his parents. Incredible. Avavi doesn't hurry. Even though Yitzchak is being right, even though Avram is being let out to be killed, nevertheless, about Shuvah is about Shuvah. And again, halacha l'maisa in halacha hey, down right from here. Avar avigolimo aver shalokim aleh vayed shiach l'dayanim lo yakir osam v'rein nischay bod nidui lo yeshliach nidosam v'lo yirda v'lo yaakov. In halacha hey, Shmuel Paskins that the son Yitzchak should not be an agent of Beis Din to carry out Malchus or to carry out mutually excommunication. Incredible. Okay, let's go back to Mishnah. Not finished yet. Hamakya other imo chayiv ashiyasa b'ayin chabura. Because we actually alluded to this already in the last video. When you hit is actually the beginning of the parak. If a person hits his father or mother, he is not chayiv unless of course he causes an injury. So you have to create the chabura. Zeh omer b'mekala b'zumaker, shemekala la'akam yisachayiv, la'makila akam yisapater. Even though normally we group hitting and cursing parents together, there's a stringency that person has over hitting, namely that hitting you're only chayiv when the parent is alive. Cursing I'm chayiv even when the parent is dead. Okay, incredible. Says the Gemara, let's analyze. So we'll say, so very important halacha. What this means is, right, Yitzchak goes over to his father Adam, like gives him like a fast, gives him a patch. It doesn't create a chabur, it doesn't create an injury. Not good, but there's not going to be the same level of liability. There's only liability for striking a parent when you cause a chabur. Says the Gemara, Aviv v'imokilel la'acham nisam. So that's when the pasuk says, Aviv v'imokilel. Most you must, Aviv v'imo kilo. So there's redundancy in the pasuk, right? The beginning of the pasuk says, Ki ish asher halal es aviv ve'es imo. If a man will curse his mother and his father, most you must, he is put to death. Why? Aviv v'imo kilo dalal bo. He has cursed his mother and father. So why do you need to say the same thing twice? To which the Gemara says, the second Aviv v'imo kilo teaches me, lachamisa, that there's liability for cursing one's parents even after death. Even after death, even after the parent died, you're not allowed to curse them. Listen to this. I would have thought, since Rabbi the Torah goes ahead and equates hitting and cursing. Therefore, just like striking a parent, there's only liability when the parent is alive. So, when cursing the parent, there's only liability when the parent is alive. So, therefore, again, the pasuk extra phrase. Aviv v'imo kilo, to teach that there's liability for cursing parents even once they are dead. Furthermore, kal v'chomer. There is a kal v'chomer, it's a kal v'chomer. Uma makeh she'asa bo ba'amcha ki ba'amcha. So the Gemara says, "Lo chayiv and lo la'achad." So furthermore, again, when it comes to makeh, when it comes to hitting someone, so what does it mean? Asa bo shelo ba'amcha ki ba'amcha. So what that means is like this. It doesn't matter whether a Jew ultimately, again, is living in fulfillment with the dictates of Jewish life or not. There's liability for hitting them. There's liability for striking any other Jew. So the Gemara says, I'm sorry, right? Yet again, there's not liability for striking someone after they're dead. When it comes to Mekalel, interestingly enough, the din of Mekalel is only for a Jew who lives in accordance with the dictates of Jewish law. But if somebody is not what we call an Amchal, in Halacha L'maisa, there's no liability for going ahead and cursing them. Certainly, there should be no liability for after death. Aviv v'imo kilo la'achamisa. So again, the extra phase of the imo kilo teaches me that what? There's liability for cursing a parent even after their death. Alright, so let's analyze. So again, this makes, we're going to see this in the Bryce in just a moment. That whole phrase of Aviv v'imo kilo is extra. Because the pasuk already said before in the earlier part of the pasuk that you can't curse your parents. What do I do with that last phrase, Aviv v'imo kilo? That's going to teach that even after the death of the parent, there's going to be liability. There was Rabbi Yoshia, my friend Rabbi Yoshia, who holds that phrase is not extra. What is there to say? What are we talking about here? Here we go. Desanya. Ish. The pasuk says ish. Now again, Lashon the pasuk is ki. Ish. Asher kalo es aviv ves imo. Why do you need ish? Why not just say ish? Why ish? Matal ish. The rabbis bas tumtum v'androgynous. The teaching that even if the father is a tumtum and an androgynous, ultimately again there's no liability for the child for cursing the parent. Asher kalal es aviv ves imo, who will curse his mother and his father. Amy ella aviv imo. I only know that there's liability if you curse both your mother and your father. Aviv shelo imo. Imo shelo aviv imo. How do I know that there's liability even if I curse my father without my mother without my father? To which the mother says, Minayin, Talomar Aviv Imo Kilo. The pasuk then goes on to say, Aviv Imo Kilo, Aviv Kilo, Imo Kilo to Rabbi Yoshia. So now you see what's happening over here? So Rabbi Yoshia says like this. Rabbi Yoshia uses that last phrase. When you look at the beginning of the pasuk says like this: Ki ish asher kalo es aviv ve'es imo. So what that makes it sound like from the reading of that pasuk is there's only liability when you curse both of your parents. Rabbi Yoshia says therefore the end of the pasuk says aviv ve'imo kilo, to teach me that part there's liability even if you curse both of your parents independently. Says Rabbi Yoshia uses that phrase for. Rabbi Yonasan says, Rabbi Yonasan says, no, that's not how we read the Sukkim. In general, whenever the pasuk creates a grouping, the assumption over here is that even people mentioned together are still reckoned separately unless the Torah places them together explicitly. What do we mean by this? Minole, for us, is very interesting. From where do we know this? Minole. Not me umekalo aviv v'imo most you must. The pasuk says ultimately again from the Kala of Imamos Yumas Vida, when we buy the Rabbos back to the androgynous. That's learned that to teach me. Pass on the androgynous. First of all, learn it out from ish. The Torah Torah is just talking in like a normative way. But listening, Chomer ben Makeh meaning Makalo. So why not highlight the idea that there's a Chumrah ben Makeh is over Makalo? How so? Sheb ben Makeh, second white line. Sheb ben Makeh also Boshel ba'amcha ki ba'amcha by Makeh will say you're chayiv for hitting any Jew. Whether the Jew is Amcha or not Amcha, you're chayiv. Mashenki in the Makalo. Ultimately, again, but that's different by Makalo. Because by Makalo, you're only chayiv for cursing the Jews ba'amcha. Kasavar makshin hakal miklala. We go ahead and ultimately again we compare or we by makshin we compare the halacha of hakal to klala. It's just like hakal you're chayiv for going ahead and hitting any Jews. So to klala, lema hani tonight. So it's the same. The piece I'm like these other tonight. So what? The tiny chada, very interesting case over here. Kusi ata mitzvah hakal. So yata mitzvah klala. So kusi. I will say now, again, remember, we're going to get into kusi in general. Kusi in Shas is used in one of two ways. Sometimes kusi just means a guy. That's what it means, just means a guy. Kusi is the same thing as akum, right? In other times, what kusi refers to is who? Are the kusim. Who are the kusim? Right? Remember again, when Shalmaneser, the king of Ashur, exiled the 10 tribes. So he had a good strategy. What was his strategy? His military strategy was, whenever you conquer a people, the first thing you do is uproot them from their natural homeland and resettle them somewhere else. That makes it less probable that they will go ahead and rebel. Okay, so when he exiled the 10 tribes, who did he put in their place? The Kusim. Where are the Kusim from? Kusa. They were Kusim were all devil Zara. There was an outbreak of lions, and they converted. There's a whole shaila about their conversion. Were they legitimate converts, not legitimate converts? So just bear that in mind. So the Gemara says as follows. So Kusi atam tzvah haka. So atam tzvah kilaso. So Kusi, if you hit a Kusi, you're chayiv. If you curse a Kusi, you're not chayiv. Thank you. That's not a right. So atam tzvah haka. So ultimately by Kusi, you're not chayiv for either hitting him or for cursing him. Now the Gemara says Savua Kikulim Alma Kusim Gere Emesain. That was the assumption we're making is everyone assumes that the Kusim were legitimate Gere. If that's the case, the Gemara says, so what are they arguing about? So the Marsa and Akshin called the Klava. One opinion says that we compare hitting someone to cursing someone, Mars, and therefore again his liability. Mars Savar, Makshin called the Klava. Another opinion says, no, we treat them separately. Which the Gemara says, well, not true. Everyone agrees. We do not go ahead and compare hitting to cursing. So what are we arguing about over here? Mar Savar Kusim Gere Arayos. Am I saying Mar Savar Kusim Gere Arayos? I'm sorry. Mar Savar Kusim Gere MSA. Mar Savar Kusim Gere Arayos. What's the machlokes? I'm saying the machlokes ultimately is what's the nature of kusim? What kusim Gere Arayos means? Like Arayos is an aleph, not an ayin, right? They converted because of the lions. Those lions, therefore, they were not legitimate Gere. Other opinions says no, they were Gere MS, legitimate lions, legitimate Gere. So the Gemara says, so let's say, so ultimately, again, if that's the case, then what does it mean when we say that the shar of a pussy is treated like the shar of a Yisrael? To which the Gemara answers, rather, we'll say, what do you see from here? What is the machlokes? The machlokes ultimately is, do we compare hakah to klala or not? That is the fundamental machlokes unfolding over here. So let's say, so just halacha l'maisa, just to understand the takeaways from here. So halacha l'maisa, the way we paskin is that hakah and klala are treated differently. Right? That, for example, there is a din of cursing one's parents, or there is a prohibition of cursing one's parents even after their death. But halacha l'maisa again, hakah, right, striking does not apply after the death of the individual. Right? It was after the death of the parent. Sorry if we're going a little bit faster on the last piece. I think I'll finish the message tomorrow. Commend the staff. Shkayach, everyone.
It has the extreme feminine voice. And I'm being very honest now. You know the feminine voice you get to hear, they're extreme.
What they will say, it is a cost to be able to flow with you. I'm sorry that I'm not able to be that person. We're playing against Hashem. Back by Tuesday afternoon. Look forward to Meretz Hashem to see everyone in here in Meretz Hashem to start building focus on ways and ways. So, but it is this nevertheless to continue to learn at least virtually. Thank you to all of our sponsors who are listed again in the description on the YouTube channel as well as on the podcast. Today's daf is PayPal at 84. We are picking up in Meretz Hashem on page Gimel in the days 83b, and we are picking up Troy Roche. So actually, no, I take it back. We are picking up about Orel. Two lines up from the bottom. About Orel, only Yoshi about that. So we're again going through the list of people. First, we went through the list of Kohanim who are high Misbedishamayim, or the circumstances which generate liability of Misbedishamayim. And then the Mishnah continued the list, the rest of the list. Then Orel, a Kohen who does the Avodah as an Orel as an order. Orel, uncircumcised, Yosef, sitting. So the halacha is all three of these things as much as they're prohibited. If a Kohen does it, is in violation of Allah and not Misbedishamayim. It says the Gemara. Now the Gemara is going to go through each of these one by one. Orel, we know. From where do we know that the Kohen does the Avodah as an Orel, that it is quote unquote only Allah and not Misbedishamayim? So the truth is, this is not explicitly mentioned in the Torah. So the lesson over here is we cannot learn this from the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu, which means it's not explicitly said in the Torah. Actually, but Yecheskel ben Muzi b'Raman. Yecheskel ben Muzi, another Yecheskel this morning. What did Yecheskel say? Ben Nechar Orel, ladies, capital K, $84A. Orel Basar lo Yava Amiknashi. It's interesting enough, the Yecheskel says, Kol ben Nechar, again, he's a non-Jew. Orel, ladies, uncircumcised heart, Orel Basar. Someone who's literally physically uncircumcised should not come to the mikdash to serve. So ultimately, again, here we see now, again, obviously, this is not a doraisa, but rather, again, this is a pasuk from Navi, and therefore, again, when the Gemara says that it's allowed, really what it means is, Rashi points out over here, so when we see Allah, really is what we call Vivek Kabbalah. So if a Kohen were to do the service as a Torah, also with circumcised, and remember again, the priest of when a Kohen is not circumcised is the priest of Mesu Echad Nachasiva, where they couldn't do a B'Shiva, right? Because if someone again should have a B'Shiva, but remains in an uncircumcised state, there's a whole different layer of liability attached to that. We're talking about over here where this particular Kohen could not have a Miva because his brothers had died as a result of a B'Shiva before. Secondly, although he is allowed, quote unquote, to remain uncircumcised, he is not allowed to serve his Good. Next, Onei. Remember again, Onei is someone, now teaching, but as you notice, you might use both lessons of Onei and Ochel. Now, for our purposes, again, Onei is a period of time between death and burial. The halacha is that a Kohen can't do the Avodah during that time. If he does so, he is high. It's a lot. It's a lot. Says Imam Nolan, we already know that. For only know. Second line from the top, 84A, $3 a dollar. Six, in the mikdash lo yezeh, v'lo yechamel es mikdash elokah. Because the pasuk says exactly by the Kohen Gadol. The pasuk says by the Kohen Gadol, actually specifically by Aaron after the death of Rabbi and Abihu, Aaron cannot leave the mikdash, and he should not profane the mikdash of his God. Now, the pasuk is telling me, even though Aaron had encountered and experienced such a catastrophic and overwhelming loss, he was not committed to leave the mikdash. He had to continue to do the avodah. The Gemara actually something very important. The Gemara says, what do you see here? It's after the Kohen Gadol who has to continue to serve as an owner. But if someone else were to serve as an owner, they would in fact profane temple service. So from here we see the fact that the Kohen Gadol has to serve as an owner /Gadol indicates to us that other Kohanim may not serve in that state. So where the Gemara is coming right now is, therefore, if a Kohen does serve in the state of Ayimus, he's in violation of Allah, prohibition. One second. Maybe we should make it clear Shabbat. Harkening back to yesterday's doctrine. Harkening back to yesterday's doctrine. Remember again, on one hand it says, by Avivos it says Hilo, and by Truma it says Hilo. So we should say, just like if a Kohen who is coming eats Truma, he's Chayiv, and he's Savidi Shamayim. So too, if a Kohen who's in Avel does the Avodah, he should also be Chayiv, he's Savidi Shamayim. I'm going to have Advar they will feel Chilum Mal Havan Misa, come to Misa, and say, just like again, by a Kohen who's coming with Truma, which is called Truma. But again, the case of the coming Kohen with each Truma is Chayiv, Savidi Shamayim. Just like by Truma is Savidi Shamayim. So too again, Onain should also be Misibidi Shamayim. Which might be one second. Mixing in the refrain, Michlal colors. First of all, just understand. The prohibition for a Kohen to do the Avodah as an Onain is not written explicitly. It's inferred. The fact that the Kohen Gadol is not allowed to leave the mikveh but has to serve even in the state of Ayunos tells us that a regular Kohen can't serve in state. So it's not explicit, it's inferred. So this is something that is learned out from an inference. And there's a principle called Dara Habam Nashal in Bani Osa B'Kirshal. Interesting, the Gemara espouses the principle. What's the principle? Anything that is learned out from an inference itself cannot be part of the Kirshal. Logically, it's saying is, in order to be part of the Kirshal, you need two explicit concepts, and you should go to the between them. If one of those concepts is not explicit, or rather learned out by inference, you cannot use it for the Kirshal. Interesting, okay, no shit in Allah. Next, I don't know that if a Kohen does the Avodah sin, that he uses by reason of Allah. The Pasuk says, "Yibol Bakar Hashem Elokecha Mikol Shvatachol La'amod U'Lisharetz." The Pasuk says by the Kohanim, Hashem chose the Kohen to go ahead and serve. And Hashem chose the Kohen from amongst all of the tribes, La'amod, to stand and to serve. What do you see from here? La'amid Bakar Tavol V'Yishiva. The sacrificial service, the temple service has to be done standing and not sitting. Therefore, if one Kohen goes there and sits during the Avodah, then Halach said he's in violation of Allah. Balmor. Next, what about a blemished Kohen? So remember again. So what happens if a blemished Kohen does the Avodah? Rabbi Orvi, so Rabbi says he's put to death. They're come say Bas Hara. It's a lot. Let's analyze. My time to Rabbi. What's Rabbi's logic that he says it's about Mum, it's a blemished Kohen does the Avodah? These guys, so what's his logic? So the message said, "Ach ala parochas lo yavo." The pasuk says that again, if the Kohen has a womb, he should not come to the parochas. And then the rest of the pasuk is, "V'lo yichalel es mikdoshi k'ani Hashem mikadasham." He should not put him on the discussion of Hillel, to be merged with the Yolit. Hillel the Truma, make it clear Shava from Balmon to Truma. Just like it says, Man lahavon b'nisa, just like by Truma. If you have a Kamei Kohen, it's Truma, it's Chinese B'dishanayim, Hashem b'nisa. So to the Balmon does the Avodah, he's also Chinese. That's what he's watching here. Shava, Hillel, from Truma to Balmon. The nail of Hillel, that's what say again. It's like Hazrat yesterday. But remember it also says Hillel by Nosa. Nosa is a few cards. So you think it's a sub of two Balmum and Nosa. It's just like Nosa is few cards. So two Balmum is few cards. Which where it says Mala Haram the cards, Afkan the cards. Instead of Shuma Havlez, no, it makes more sense to have Balmum from Shuma than from Nosa. Why? They came Psul Haguf with Psul Haguf. Because remember again, the common denominator between Shuma and Balmum is in both cases begin with a disqualified Kohen. Right? Balmum, the Kohen himself has a blemish, and the case of Shuma here, Kohen who is coming, eating Shuma, consuming Shuma. So it makes more sense to learn out physical disqualification from physical disqualification. Agadabo, just the opposite. You know to have a little bit. You know to why? Between Kodesh Nim, Pigel, and Nosa. Because again, has a lot of commonality. Number one, they're both Kodesh. Number two, again, it's all taking place inside of the Mikdash. And furthermore, again, it's subject to Pigel and Nosa. Ella, Mitamesh, Ella, Mitamesh, Shimish, Ella, Mitame, Shimish, Kamar, Sul Hagof, Sul Hagof, Kodesh, Nim. Agora, não está falando dela, você tem Kodesh, Nim, Pigel, and Nosa. So local nights again, we should message it. Learn out from Nosa rather than from Shuma. Ella, Mitame, Shimish, Kamar. Rather again, it is better no. We'd rather learn out from the case. We're going to learn out. Ultimately again from coming to Shimish. So who's coming to Shimish? That's the Kohen who is coming who does the Avodah. Again, this is more like we had this yesterday and Sunday as well. So the Gemara says, "Ella Mitame Shimish Kamar, Sulagok with Sulagok." Which the Gemara says, "Kodesh Nim Pigol Venosa, Mikodesh Nim Pigol Venosa." Okay, so this is Rabbi's logic. So Rabbi's logic ultimately again is an halacha. So again, different ways to learn it out, different possibilities learning it out, but the Lisa results in a few of these. Okay, so let's remember, try to figure out what here. The Balmum does the Avodah. What is halacha? Rabbi says few of. So again, a couple of different possibilities of where they're at. What about Rabbanon? Rabbanon Amrikra, Bo, V'lo Balmum. The Rabbanon say the pasuk says Bo. Pasuk says about this is not the point of the Avodah Seder Tumah. It says ultimately again, this individual is chayiv himself, but not a Baal. Okay, that's the logic. That's the logic. So the Gemara goes like this. What about the case? Well, since therefore, if I'm not going to focus again, Gemara is up to my focus, it's not Mashiach. Does not decide. Kohen Baal Mum does the Avodah. Halacha L'maisa again. What this is because this. Right. Listen, so I'll just tell you. The way the Rambam passes like the Chacham. And if a Kohen Baal Mum does the Avodah, it is not he is needs to be given Shemayim. Rather again, is love. That's like the Chacham. Okay. So next, this is the Nigila. What about a case of intentional Nigila? So what's the status here? Rabbi over the Nisa. Rabbi says that the Nisa, that the Chacham only does Torah. Chacham say that it's a law. My time is Rabbi. What's Rabbi's logic? Why does Rabbi say that ultimately intentional Nigila is Nisa? And Rabbi Avo, Gamar Chet Chet Yishua. The Shava of Chet Chet Yishua. The state ultimately by Nigila. It says Chet by Shuma. Mal Havan. Just like by Shuma. Thinking about like all the cases of Shuma are a Kohen who's coming particularly to that piece of Shuma. So just like by Shuma, there's a key of needs to be the Shemayim. After Nisa, so to over here, by this particular intentional Nigila, so there needs to be the Shemayim as well. The Rabbanan on the other hand say no. The Rabbanan say again, once again, when is there or where is there Nisi Shemayim? That'll be the case ultimately again if the Kohen who goes ahead and intentionally does the Avodah Seder Tumah. But for my say not easy to use. And once again, the Rambam passes like the comment. Again, the Rambam that the English part of that is on the Dalit. Rambam on yesterday, I can't think of the Dalit. Rambam passes like the comment. A person intentionally goes in and violates the Nigila, and it's not easy to Shemayim, instead it's easy to do. Incredible. All right, so let's see back to the Mishnah.
Thank you.
Remember again, I will say this was Shabbos' Dash, right? So Mishnah said this was the end of the hour from the base.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity. You should all know that you sound wonderful. Let's not fight over it. Okay, you all sound great. First and foremost, I've done my best to follow every single person in this space. I'd appreciate it if you follow me back. I have hundreds of thousands of followers on social media. I'm a KOL, and you want to connect with me. Secondly, you should know that I have spent more than 360 days live streaming on X Spaces 24/7. You don't know anybody else on X who does 24/7 Spaces, let alone video streaming. So you want to connect with me for that reason. And most importantly, if you don't know who I am, I'm Rabbi Rothschild. You will. I stream my life 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year for world peace. I've been doing so for more than 4 years. My streams go back to the pandemic. We've seen the death of a queen, the birth of AI, the coronation of a king, and everything in between. This is a real-life Truman Show, a real-life Big Brother. This is a timeline and a time capsule of human achievement. In the 1990s, the phrase "content is king" was coined, and I'm making it true today. I'm king of the internet. This is the biggest event in global history, and here's why. In 2018, The Economist magazine stated that data had overtaken petroleum as Earth's #1 resource, and I have more data archived on the internet than any person ever. And that means I'm going viral, and when I do, I want to make you, your friends, your family, all financially independent if you're not already. I want to ensure that you have generational wealth if you don't already, and I want you to be able to start charities and philanthropic organizations of your own. I'm unlike any influencer you're ever going to meet. I'm not live on one YouTube stream nor 2 YouTube streams. I'm live on over 20 simultaneous YouTube streams 24 hours a day. You can view my life from 360 degrees. I even have a ceiling cam. If you want to view my YouTube streams, the link's available in my profile. Additionally, you'll find it in my pinned post. You'll also find in my pinned post a link to my link tree. I dare you to look at my link tree. Nobody dares you to look at their link tree, but I do, because I have more social media than any person ever. I have more content than any person ever. Additionally, you'll find a link to my Discord, discord.me/rabbi. I'm proud to say that we have over 2,800 people in our community and continue to grow each day. In addition to making you all extremely wealthy and wanting to promote world peace, I want you to know that I want to end world hunger through the use of technology, such as agricultural drones, floating greenhouses, saltwater greenhouses, hydroponics, vertical farming, cloud seeding. I want to help end world thirst. I'm sponsored by a cryptocurrency that's worth about $100 million, and one of the things things that we do is we build wells and water towers in developing nations for the benefit of the less fortunate. Additionally, I'm an advocate for the Lifestar program and, most importantly, desalination technology, where we pump earth seawater onto land and make it drinkable. If you're a reply guy, if you're a Web3 marketer, if you're a raider or a shiller, and you want a free mentor, coach, and friend, send me a follow. I will follow you back. Send me a DM. I will respond. I want you all to know that I'm here to support you both personally and professionally. I'm here to be a positive person in your lives. I'm here to have an optimistic view on the future. And most importantly, I want to give people hope. And with that, I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to share.
The first method is between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva, right? Rabbi Shmuel is making the Shava Abada Kare Kimas, and he's comparing it to the followers of Korah. Just like the followers of Korah was killed Misvidei Shanayim, so too again the Zav, the 9-pointed Gazi Avodah, is also killed Misvidei Shanayim. Rabbi Akiva disagrees. Rabbi Akiva compares the Zar to the false prophet. Just like the false prophet is killed with Tefillah, so too the Zar is killed with Tefillah. So it says, no matter what the Machlokas, when I come to figure out Rabbi Akiva, we'll say first 5 line on the bottom, page 84a, Rabbi Akiva said it's done in Yumas mi Yumas. Then done in Yumas mi Yumas. Oh, Rabbi Akiva says like this. However, if you're making Tir Shava, do it right. How do you make a Tir Shava? With 2 identical words. So the word is Yumas. It says Yumas by Zar, and it says Yumas by the false prophet. By Adas Korach, by the followers of Korach, the Russian
Absolutely.
is Yumas, not Yumas. Rabbi Akiva says if I have to make a Tir Shava with identical words. Rabbi Shmuel says, done in Hegel the Hegel, then done in Hegel the Navi. Rabbi Shmuel says, no, it's better to make a Shava between the Zar and ultimately Adas Korach. Why? Because they were both ordinary people. As opposed to the Zar and the Navi again is the person of the guy. Remember again, the only way the false prophet gets any kind of legitimacy is that someone has proven himself as a David Abba, as a good guy. So therefore, Rabbi Shmuel will say, better to learn ordinary people from ordinary people. So the Zar from Adas Korach, and not learn the Zar from the Navi, which we must say the Akiva, Kevin Shivir, in the Hegel Navi. And the Akiva says, well, maybe this Navi wants to come time with this. But once he's now trying to convince Jews to worship idolatry, in the Hegel Yosef, he says, there's no more ordinary of a person than this. Very profound.
DeFi, I can explain. Okay, do you know what a live streamer is? DeFi, do you know what a live streamer is?
The identity and your status is fundamentally tethered on what you are here and now. Incredibly so. And Mars goes on. Mike Murphy, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Yochanan. So by the way, now, we understand we have a fundamental focus, ultimately in between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva. Fine. Now, but in actually the false prophet himself is not focus, Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Akiva says Tefillah, Rabbi Yochanan says Chemek. So what's going on here? Which the Gemara says, what's the Machlokas? The Gemara says, "My God, Rabbi Yochanan, the Machlokas is Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Yochanan. Anyway, the Machlokas Rabbi Shimon, Rabbanan. Their argument, their Machlokas is the Machlokas Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbanan. What's the Machlokas? The Sanya, Navi Shitiyah, Tefillah. If the Navi tries to make people worship by idolatry, he's killed Tefillah. Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Chemek. Rabbi Shimon says, no, Chemek. The Gemara says, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Chemek. Ha'anan Tanan, Rabbi Akiva over the Chemek. So what's that? We have on record that Rabbi Akiva also says Chemek. So you just said before that Rabbi Akiva holds that the Navi who tries to convince people to do idolatry ultimately is killed by Tefillah. They have Rabbi Akiva's on record, and the Mishnah is saying that it's a Chemek. Straight Chemek, Rabbi Akiva. There's my focus on Rabbi Akiva says 2 different times. One time Rabbi Akiva holds.
Absolutely, plus Paul. Excellent question. Okay, so maybe a few generations ago, I would have been a diarist, someone who writes in a diary, or a journalist, someone who writes in a journal. But what I do is create essentially a time capsule or a timeline using video, so that you can literally go back in my life to any moment of any day for the last 4 years and not just know what I was doing, but also what was going on in world events. And you should know that AI needs human data in order to build its models, and I have more data for AI to be able to create its models than any person ever, which is making me a very influential person. Essentially, all of the data that I'm creating will be monetized in the future. I'm creating a giant library of this, and I'd like to do it for the rest of my life. So essentially, you'll be able to see my life in decades from now and go back in time, almost like a time machine, to see what was going on. It's going to be extremely valuable to humans. Just like in the past where people would read history books or people would read someone's diary or someone's journal, I do the same, but I do it using video. Does that answer your question?
We spoke about strangulation a little bit, right? Again, you have the cloth around the neck, trying to pull the rope from both ends, and ultimately strangle the individual. Again, we'll get more into this later on. So you must So who gets Chenek? Again, we'll talk more about the actual penalty of Chenek in just a little bit. Who gets Chenek? When is there Chenek liability? When a person hits his father or his mother.
That's incorrect. I'm sponsored by cryptocurrency. Whenever you watch my streams, I'm literally wearing a merchandise of $100 million coin. Additionally, in the last 100 days, I've helped over 100 people get jobs in Web3. So if I may just interject, I help Web3 24/7.
What happens if you have a judge who refuses to yield to the judge? He refuses. That's called the sucking of the matter.
Absolutely. Let me explain what I do.
Again, worry about that later.
I will help you, absolutely. And that's why I say anybody who wants a mentor, coach, and friend, send me a DM. I'll be happy to help you. This is what I help people to do. First and foremost, if you don't have a resume, I help people to get a resume. If you don't know what a resume is, it's essentially a summary of your contact information, the kind of job that you want, your past career history, and your education. What we do is we get a one-page resume for yourself. Then what we do is we make sure that you have the ability to apply on different job sites, because I want you to not just have a Web3 job, but I want you to have a career as well. And whatever it is you may do, you may be a community manager, you may be a Web3 marketer, you may be a reply guy. If you're a reply guy, I want to make you better. I want to make you into a social media manager. If you are a community manager, that's great. I want to make you into a brand ambassador. Whatever you want to do, I want to enhance you. And by the way, everything that I tell people is absolutely free. The strategy that we use is free, and I never charge anybody for any of this. I do it out of the goodness of my heart. Additionally, there are a lot of people on here who want to have bigger networks, and they don't know how to do it. So what I advise people to do is create a link tree. If you don't know what a link tree is, it's essentially one link that you can put in your X profile that gives links to all of your other social media. I make sure that people create as many social media accounts on these different platforms as possible to have the biggest network that they can. This has a 5-part strategy. First, it allows you to be able to promote yourself on the most amount of platforms. Secondly, it allows you to promote your clients on the most amount of platforms. Thirdly, what it does is it gives you more than 30 different communication channels to get new clients. Fourthly, what it does is it allows you to rank really highly in social media, in AI, and in search engine. And finally, it makes it very difficult to impersonate you. Once people do this, I look over their profile, I help them with it if they need help, and then what we do is we go and we ensure that they have content on their different social media. Then what I help people to do is be able to pitch themselves with a 30-second, a 60-second, and a 90-second pitch, so that they can go into a space and with very little experience come in and say, "Hi everyone, I'm a Web3 marketer and I'd love to promote your project on my 30 different social media platforms." That means you're going to get more DMs about your project, more people buying your cryptocurrency, more people interested in your NFT. If this sounds good to you, please send me a DM. I'd love to work with you. And then I give people a menu that they can essentially send to their customers in order to make $10, $20, $100 a day if they want to, depending on the project. So I do my best to help people to become more successful in the Web3 space while simultaneously live streaming my life. Thank you for letting me contribute.
The problem is that, what does that mean? A person kills his father's Chenek. Now, the most operating under the assumption that Chenek is considered to be a more lenient form of death penalty. What I was going to say is, if you kill a stam person, a regular person, not your father, you're executed by sight, a more cumbersome, a more cumbersome of death. If you kill your parents, you have a Chenek, you're like, you put that a more lenient form of death. What does that mean? Here's one second. When you kill him, I'm going to Chenek hell. Now, that's fine if you understand that Chenek in general is a more lenient form of death penalty. Elements Chenek common measure. But if you say the Chenek is more common than what is the error, so just trying to figure out over here. Here's what I know. Pasuk says, if you hit your mother and father, you put to death. Stand unqualified death penalty is coming. Well, trying to figure out over here, what do you mean you hit them? You hit them and you injure them, or you hit them and you kill them? Which we must be very interesting. Element it said, Mate ish hames los yumas. Uksid oge'eva hitov yado hayamos. So also, it's very interesting. Look at other cases in the Husband side. And notice the interesting emotion that the Torah uses. Right? Maki Yishanis, if a man takes his fellow and the other person dies, then the hitter is put to death. Or Be'ivaito, if you hit someone with animosity, right? You know, that was your hand, Hayamos, and he dies. But you notice in both of these passages, what do you see?
No, I'm comfortable with saying it. I have the heart of a teacher. I'm a teacher, and I like to help to educate people. I'm a certified project management professional. I have successfully launched apps on the App Store and Google Play with millions of downloads. That has allowed me to have financial independence. Additionally, I'm a rabbi. The term rabbi means teacher in Hebrew. I like to teach. I like to see people better themselves. If you join my community, that's great, but I don't demand it of anybody. You don't have to. If you just want to DM me and get information from me, that's absolutely fine. I don't ask anything from anybody. I absolutely understand what's the reason why you do it. If anything, I like to see people better themselves, but you can ask the 100 people who I've helped in the last 100 days, not one of them has ever been asked for anything. I do my best to improve people, and really the joy that I get out of it is to see people become successful. When they come back to me and they say, Rabbi, I got my first job, that's great. And they're like, okay, but I don't really know what to do. What do we do? And I help them and we strategize. That's a great feeling. And so if anything, I enjoy the feeling I get when I help people.
Interestingly enough, the Torah says there seems to be two redundant sittings. On one hand, it says, not to be funny as most of us. If you hit someone and they die, you'll be put to death. And it says, the chomak and nefesh. Right? The Torah says, the chomak and nefesh, right? Here it says, suppose it says, if you kill a nefesh. So it says, chomak, right? It says, chomak ish v'amis. If you hit a man and he dies, you're put to death. And then it says, chomak and nefesh. If you kill a person, you put to death. Why do you both those decisions? So what this is fascinating. Because of Rahman and Maki Ish Ramesh, this is what it just said, Maki Ish, if you kill that Ish means a man. If you kill a man, you put to death. I would have thought like this. Havani, the Banit Sivaim, Katamo. I would have thought like this. When are you liable for killing someone? You kill a man. Why? Because a man is liable to a whole bunch of mistakes. So it makes perfect sense. Katamo. If you kill a child, you're not liable. You're not liable, right? The child is highly missing. Therefore, I said, Rahman, Komak and different Torah says, no, Komak, what is that? You never use any living thing. So you need to have some to a child, you're also tired. Hiding less, which is because of Rahman, Komak and Nefesh. The third one is just said Komak and Nefesh. I would have thought this, how about me, no?
Excellent question. I'm not the one who hosted that space. That's another account that I have that I don't promote. That's an account that simply records my life 24/7. That's the one that has been live streaming on X since February 14th of last year. So we're just coming up on a year. And those aren't like the audio is important, but what's really important to me from those videos or from those spaces, and you may not be able to see it if you only have an Android account, is it's video. So if you go into that space with an iOS device, you'll be able to see me for 20 hours straight. That's extremely important in my project in archiving the life of a human being. So I don't promote those spaces. I mean, I did repost it recently with this account, but that project is not really promoted by my bigger account, which is this one. So for anyone out there, if you ever want to find that space, in the X Spaces search, just type Rabbi, and you'll be able to watch my life 24/7. If you're ever bored, come check it out. I don't promote that space, though. I just let it go, and it's been going now for more than 350 straight days, which is quite an accomplishment. And yeah, I've done it. I do them for 24 hours usually, and then I restart them. So I don't promote them. I don't ask people to join them. The 5 people who join were just random accounts that join. I don't do that because I want people to join those spaces. When I host a space, I'll get hundreds of people in the space. When I have that account join the space, it's really just archiving the video.
There's no injury. There's no chabula. There's no injury. So yes, obviously not good. Not chayit so. Only chayit because of chabula. Which they went to Makia Adam or Makia. So how do you know this? It's not the standard over here. That Makia Adam is this means really anyone says. Maybe every high connect. Maybe it just means you hit them without anything. How do you know that in order to be liable at that penalty for hitting one's parents, you have to cause bodily harm? How do we know that? It's very interesting. I'm going to the pasuk says Makia Adam or Makia Behemoth. The pasuk proposes one injures a person and one injures another. Ma Makia Behemoth had the other day Kabula. technically injure an animal. There's only liability if you cause an injury. You have to cause a wound.
Welcome.
Slap a cow, or it's weird. But when I start, you're not trying to
Welcome.
no monetary compensation. Just like Mafia is only tied if you cause an injury. Juxtaposition, Mafia is also only tied to striking a person if you.
Yo, what up, Levi?
Incredible. Siba, Gemara says, Ma Mafia the Hema ad Abed Bakura. The Siba, Mafia Adam ad the Abed Bakura. So it's like there's only liability for striking one's parents, one positive. So it's incredibly important. So the Gemara suggesting over here is that time a person strikes their parent, obviously bad, but not at that point to let the person strike him and cause some type of injury. So I'm asking for like, this is one second. If that's the case, that we're talking about the animal, that you're only liable for injuring the animal, you're not supposed to have a cause of injury. If that's the case, if you shove out running, let's say I go over to the range animal, and I move the animal up with a whole load of stones. So I'm not physically injuring the animal, but I'm diminishing its strength. You're telling them there's no liability because there's no physical wound. How can I make the limit? He's going to say that of course I'm going to be Why? Because at the end of the day, I actively diminish the value, right? And the strength of the animal. It's even if it's my animal, they don't cause a physical injury. Hello, and in the nefesh behema, the ha'inam the sisham ba'abanishim. So if that's the case, I don't really need nefesh. I don't really need nefesh behema. Right? It says nefesh, right? The nefesh pasuk by the way is makin nefesh behema. So I don't really I don't need nefesh behema to teach me that I have to cause an injury. Why? Because by an animal, the truth is, even if you don't cause an injury, but you clearly do something that substantially diminishes the car on the animal you're going to be fighting. So if I don't need nefesh behema to teach me about animal injuries, then what? The ha'inam yefisha ba'abanim chayiv. So use it for nefesh adam. Use it for nefesh adam. Elahekesha lamani. So therefore, why don't you hekesh? Therefore, it turns out interestingly enough that the way we're learning this out, ultimately, again, it's from nefesh behema. Right? And Maka nefesh thing will teach me that even by a person, I'm only chayiv if I injure. Right? If I hit my parent, I'm only chayiv if I actually cause bodily harm. If a person just hits or slaps and there's no subsequent bodily harm from that, then Allah said there's not a death penalty involved here. So says if that's the case, so then what are the hekesh between nefesh behema or maka adam what was the Russian? Right. Maka nefesh. No, I'm sorry. Maka adam maka behema. Right. So what now obviously the pasuk juxtaposes injuring the animal and injuring the person. So what does that juxtaposition mean? This is very interesting. It is Samuel. Both of this is fascinating. I'm sorry. So therefore, what is the hekesh? Maka behema, maka adam. So what is the juxtaposition of injuring a person, injuring an animal? What does that mean? The first thing Gemara says is comes to teach me the ruling of the Bechis. What's the ruling of the Bechis? You have to take a look at that. We actually had this before in the Gemara. The Baba Kamal lift Torah Chaybin Misos Shogi Gemina Hashomin Mamakin and Lokalaka. So what's the invention? So the Bechis case is like this. You know there's a concept of cumulative value, right? Which means that Allah if you do something that generates capital liability, you are exempt from any financial liability. But the Bechis goes like this. Even if you do something b'shogeg, if it's the kind of act that had you done it b'nezid, you would be exempt from financial liability. Even if you do it b'shogeg, you're exempt from financial liability. Okay, and they were learning out from that message. You might say, that's fine, but that's fine if you hold like the less than but if you don't hold of the many reject that concept and they say the only time that you're cut from monetary compensation is when you are liable to death penalty. But if you did something you're struggling and if we're not liable to death, you are liable to pay. So if you reject that reward, then what do you do with the husband? Not the merchant. So remember again, just understand, we're just trying to figure out whether the possible juxtaposition injuring a person, injuring an animal. So what do I need that for? So which thing am I listen to this? Ma'amake the hema l'refuach hater, af make adam l'refuach. Just like what happens if I am you raise animals and I'm trying to help with it, and I end up injuring it more. So if I injure the animal in the context of trying to do it, there's no right there. So the Gemara learns out the juxtaposition is the same thing with a person. If I'm trying to help someone and I end up injuring them, I am not liable for that. That's the juxtaposition. So the Gemara says, the boy little, then listen to this case. Then, Maushi is dum. Let's listen to this. Let's say again, let's say we have a father Abraham, and Abraham has a son Yitzchak. And Abraham is ill, and he needs bloodletting. Because again, remember bloodletting was the preferred manner of all medicinal healing. So now, Yitzchak wants to help his father. What's the problem? What did we just say? If a son injures his father, right, and drawing blood is from the injuries, but here the son's intention is not to injure his father, just the opposite. His intention is to help. So is he allowed to do this or not? It says, the Masna Amravasa says, yes, it is permitted. Why? It's incredible. Because again, if you see another youth in distress, you can help them out, especially if that kid is your father. What's the shayla? Of course you should help. But the right says the juxtaposition. The Torah says juxtaposition. Just like if you injure an animal in the course of trying to help, in the course of trying to do it, so if we injure someone in the course of trying to heal them, blood as well. So the Lord says, interesting, both of these opinions are agreed, meaning that a son is permitted to go and do bloodletting on his father, even though he's going to quote unquote injure him. But since the injury is from medicinal purposes, therefore it is going to be incredible. So this by the way, just so you should know, we'll do this more on Wednesday, but this will be a fascinating, because again, let's say again, a son is a doctor, he wants to treat his father, he's about to treat his father. Or again, a child is a nurse and wants to draw blood. Or just even not a nurse, a child is caring for a parent, right, and wants to go ahead, have blood sugar, different things like this. Is a child allowed to do these things for a parent, knowing that essentially they're doing a kabula, they're quote-unquote injuring the parent, even though the injury is not to be purpose. The injury is ultimately for a fool, but is a child allowed to do it now? Both of the opinions mentioned here seem to indicate the answer is yes. It's just a shayla. First opinion says, of course it's permitted. Second opinion learns out from the Hakesh, the comparison between Makya Adam and Makya Behema. But listen to this. The Gemara says, Rav, lo shavik libre le mishkale silu. So Rav would not allow his son to remove a splinter from his hand. Right? So if Rav got a splinter, he would not let his son remove the splinter. Why not? Because again, it could cause bleeding, cause an injury. So similarly, again, Mar, the son of Ravina, would not allow his son to literally open up a boil. Why not? Because if he would do it, or he wanted to lance the boil, open up the boil to get the pasta. He wouldn't do it. Why? Because if his son would perhaps be a little bit too aggressive, he could cause an injury beyond the boil. So this is fascinating. So two great Rabbanim who would not allow their children to help them, taking out a splinter, lancing the boil, because of concern that it could cause a chabura. You must say, 1 second. If that's the concern, that someone may end up injuring someone and trying to help them, then in fact just did in the son, then no one else should be able to go and lance the boil, take out the splinter. Someone else should also not be permitted to take out the splinter or lance the boil. To which the Gemara says, no. Acher shigagas lav. Shigagas chenek. Here's the big difference. If someone else is trying to take out the splinter and they accidentally injure me, okay, it's a lav. It's a lav, and it's an accidental lav. My son, if he does it, is an accidental chiyuv misa chenek. So I will say, so what you see over here is this fascinating tension. So on one hand, when the Gemara asks, is a son allowed to essentially, quote unquote, injure his father for the purpose of healing him? The Gemara's question was with bloodletting. First two opinions, yes, hekesh between Makya Adam and Makya Behema. But yet again, you see Rav not allowing his son to take out the splinter, and Marabre Dravina not allowing his son to lance the boil. So again, we're gonna stop over at this today, but we'll continue to answer more tomorrow. But fundamental shayla is, what does this mean? So how do you reconcile it? Is it that a mamish hold that it's usher, that even if the son is trying to help, that Allah Alamaisa, again, a son is not allowed to do anything to a parent which could potentially result in injury to the parent, or would they just be more machmir on themselves? Is there a distinction between where it's only the son is available to do it versus other people to do it? So that Amir Hashem coming attractions. But the takeaway, but just important to also understand, we have solidified the first understanding that clearly if a son, a child, does strike their parent and causes physical injury, then Allah saw the punishment is small. Dr. Russell, stop by for today. Can't wait to see everyone in person on Wednesday. When it will say it is a source to be able to know it, I'm sorry that I'm not able to be there in person, but look forward to Meretz Hashem. Be back by Tuesday afternoon. Look forward to Meretz Hashem to see everyone in Shir Meretz Hashem B'Shal Kol Mufachas on Wednesday morning. So, but it is a source nevertheless to continue to learn, at least virtually. Thank you. All of our sponsors who are listed again in the description on the YouTube channel as well as on the podcast. Today's daf is page down 84. We are picking up a Meretz Hashem on page Gimel the base 83b, and we are picking up a Prue Rosh. So actually, no, I take it back. We are picking up about Orel. 2 lines up from the bottom. About Orel owning the Yoshe Bazar. So remember again going through the list of people. First, we went through the list of Kohanim who are Chai Misbedei Shemayim, or just say circumstances which generate liability of Misbedei Shemayim, and then the Mishnah created a list, or the Bride created a list. Then in Avel, a Kohen who does the Avodah as an Avel as a mourner, Orel, uncircumcised, Yoshev, sitting. So the halach is all three of these things, as much as they're prohibited. If a Kohen does it, he's in violation of Allah, and not Misbedei Shemayim. It says the Gemara. So now the Gemara is going to go through each of these one by one. Orel Minoma. From where do we know that if a Kohen does the Avodah as an Orel, that it is quote unquote only Allah and not Misbedei Shemayim? So the truth is, this is not explicitly mentioned in the Torah. So it's just in the Lashon over here is we did not learn this from the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu, which means it was not explicitly said in the Torah. Yecheskel ben Buzi v'lamanu. Yecheskel ben Buzi, Rabbi Yecheskel came along, and what did Yecheskel say? Kol ben nechar orel leif top of Pedal 84a v'orel basar lo yava amikdashi. It's interesting enough. So Yecheskel says Kol ben nechar, again, who's a non-Jew, orel leif, uncircumcised heart, v'orel basar. And someone who's literally physically uncircumcised should not come to the mikdash to serve you. So ultimately, again, here we see now, again, obviously, this is not a Doraisa, but rather, again, this is a pasuk from Navi. And therefore, again, when the Gemara says that it's a law, really what it means is, Rashi points out over here, so when we say Allah, really is what we call divrei kabbalah. So if a Kohen were to do the service as an Orel, someone who's uncircumcised, and I remember again, the case of where a Kohen is not circumcised is the case of Mesu Echav Machmas Milah, where they couldn't do a bris milah, right? Because if someone again can have a bris milah but remains in an uncircumcised state, there's a whole different layer of liability attached to that. We're talking about over here where this particular Kohen could not have a milah because his brothers had died as a result of a bris milah beforehand. So such an individual, although he is allowed, quote unquote, to remain uncircumcised, he is not allowed to serve the Beis Hamikdash. Where do you learn it out from? Pasuk Yecheskel. Good. Next, Onain. Remember again, Onain is someone. Now it's interesting, by the way, if you notice, the Gemara uses both lashon of Onain and Avel. Now, for our purposes, again, Onain is the state of a period of time between death and burial. So the halach is that a Kohen can't do the Avodah during that time. And if he does so, he is chayiv. It's a lot. It's a lot. It says Gemara Minolan. Where do you know that from? Only Minolan. Second line from the top, 84a, Pedal Medal. Because the pasuk says it's actually by the Kohen Gadol. Pasuk says by the Kohen Gadol, actually specifically by Aaron after the death of Nadav and Abihu. Aaron cannot leave the mikdash, and he should not profane the mikdash of his God. Now, the pasuk is telling me that even though Aaron had encountered and experienced such a catastrophic and overwhelming loss, he was not permitted to leave the mikdash. He had to continue to do the avodah. So the Gemara dashes something very important. The Gemara says, "What do you see from there? It's after the Kohen Gadol who has to continue to serve as an owner. But if someone else were to serve as an oni, they would in fact profane temple service. So from here you see the fact that the Kohen Gadol has to serve as an onim / avel indicates to us that other Kohanim may not serve in that state. So now we'll say, so where the Gemara is holding right now is, therefore, if a Kohen does serve in the state of aninos, he's in violation of a law, prohibition. Versus 1 second, maybe we should make a gzir shava, chilul the truma, harkening back to yesterday's daf. Harkening back to yesterday's daf. So remember again, on one hand it says by avelos it says chilel, and by truma it says chilel. So we should say, just like if a kohen who is tamei eats truma, he's chayiv misa b'dei shamayim. So too, if a kohen who's an avel does the avoda, he should also be chayiv misa b'dei shamayim. And say just like again by a kohen who's tamei who eats truma, we'll just call it truma for now on. But again, the case is a tamei kohen who eats truma is chayiv misa b'dei shamayim. So just like by truma is misa b'dei shamayim, so too again, onein should also be misa b'dei shamayim. Which Gemara says 1 second. First of all, just understand the prohibition for a kohen to do the avoda as an onin is not written explicitly; it's inferred. The fact that the Kohen Gadol is not allowed to leave the mikdash but has to serve even in the state of aninos tells us that a regular kohen can't serve in the state of aninos. So it's not explicit; it's inferred. So the Gemara says, so this is something that is learned out from an inference, and there's a principle. Interesting. The Gemara espouses a principle. What's the principle? Anything that is learned out from an inference itself cannot be part of the Gzir Shavah, which logically it's saying is, in order to be part of the Gzir Shavah, you need two explicit concepts, and you can build a bridge between them. If one of those concepts is not explicit or rather learned out by inference, you cannot use it for Gzir Shavah. Interesting. Okay. Yoshit Ninala. Next. How do I know that if a kohen does the avodah sitting, that he is in violation of Allah? Amar Rava, Amar Matman, Amar Kra, the pasuk says, Kibol bachar Hashem Elokecha mikol shvatecha la'amod l'shares. So the pasuk says by the Kohanim, Hashem chose the Kohen to go ahead and serve, and Hashem chose the Kohen from amongst all of the tribes, la'amod, to stand and to serve. What do you see from here? La'amid bachar tevalo v'yeshiva. The dafka avod, the sacrificial service, temple service, has to be done standing and not sitting. Therefore, if a Kohen goes there and sits during the avodah, then halacha l'maisa, he's in violation of Allah. Balmor. Next, what about a blemished Kohen? So remember again. So what happens if a blemished Kohen does the avodah? Rabbi or Misa. Rabbi says he's put to death. The Chum say bashara. It's a law. So let's analyze. My time to Rabbi. What's Rabbi's logic that he says if a blemished Kohen does the avodah, it's chayiv misa. What's his logic? So the Gemara says v'chsev ach ala parochas lo yavo. The pasuk says that again, if a Kohen has a mum, he should not come to the parochas. And then the rest of the pasuk is v'lo yichalel es mikdoshi ki ani Hashem mikadasham. He should not profane my mikdash. Lashon of chilul. So the Gemara says v'yolid chilul mitruma. Make a gzir shava from balmum to truma. Just like it says man lahavon b'misa. Just like by truma, if you have a tamei kohen eats truma, it's chayiv misa b'dei shamayim. Afkan b'misa. So if a balmum does the avodah, he's also chayiv misa. So that's Rabbi's logic. Gzir shava chilul from truma to balmum. The nail of chilul minosar. So we'll say again. This is like a chazar from yesterday. But remember, it also says chilul by nosar. And nosar is a chi of kares. So you should make a gzir shava between balmum and nosar. So just like nosar is chi of kares, so too balmum is chi of kares. To which the Gemara says, "Ma la'alam b'kares achkan b'kares." We start off with truma havlelim. No, it makes more sense to learn about balmum from truma than from nosar. Why? Shekein psul haguf mi psul haguf. Because remember again, the common denominator between truma and balmum is in both cases you're dealing with a disqualified kohen. Right? Balmum, the kohen himself has a blemish, and in the case of truma, is we have a kohen who is tamei, eating truma, consuming truma. So it makes more sense to learn out physical disqualification from physical disqualification. Agarabo, so just the opposite. I mean, nosar havaleila melech. No, you should learn out from nosar. Why? Shekein kodesh pnim pigol v'nosar. Because again, it has a lot of commonalities. Number one, they're both kodesh. Number two, again, it's all taking place inside of the mikdash. And furthermore, again, it's subject to pigol and osar. Ella mitame sheshimesh kamar psul haguf mipsul haguf kodesh pnim I'm sorry, I just lost the place. Adrabah. We know several other Melech. Shekein Kodesh Pnim Pigel V'Nosar. Salot L'Mais again. We should learn out from Nosar rather than from Truma. Elal Mitame Sheshimesh Kamar. Rather, again, it is better. No, we'd rather learn it out from the case. Okay, so the Gemara is not switching gears. We're going to learn out. Ultimately, again, from Tamei Sheshimesh. Now, who's Tamei Sheshimesh? That's the Kohen who is Tamei, who does the Avodah. Again, this is more like we had this yesterday and Sunday as well. So the Gemara says, Elami Tamei Sheshimesh Kamar, Psul HaGuf, Mipsul HaGuf. To which the Gemara says, Kodesh Pnim Pigol V'Nosar, Mi Kodesh Pnim Pigol V'Nosar. Okay, so we'll say, so this is Rabbi's logic. So Rabbi's logic ultimately, again, is an halacha l'maisa. Again, different ways you can learn it out, different possibilities of learning it out, but l'maisa results in a chiyuv misa. Okay, so we'll say, so remember, trying to figure out over here. If a Baal Mum does the avodah, what is the halacha? Rabbi says chiyuv misa. Again, a couple of different possibilities as to where he learns it out. What about the Rabbanon? The Rabbanon Amar Kra, Bo, v'lo Baal Mum. The Rabbanon say the pasuk says Bo. The pasuk says about the Kohen that does the avodah in the state of Tumah. It says ultimately again, this individual is chayiv misa, but not a Baal. Okay, that's the logic. So the Gemara goes right there. His Me'ilah. What about the case? So therefore, fundamental machlokes again. The Gemara ends up with the machlokes is not machriya. It does not decide. Kohen Baal Mum does the avodah. So halacha l'maisa again. What like this is we have this. Right, so I'll just tell you the way the Rambam passes. Rambam passes like the Chachamim. And if a Kohen Baal Mum does the avodah, it is not chiyuv misa b'guf shemayim. Rather, again, it is ilav. It is ilav. So pass like the Chachamim. Okay, so next, is it the Me'ilah? What about a case of intentional Me'ilah? So what's the status here? Rabbi Omer b'Misa. Rabbi says there's a chiyuv misa. The Chachamim Omer b'as haram. The Chachamim say that it's ilav. Says the Gemara. So what's going on here? My time is Rabbi. What's Rabbi's logic? Why does Rabbi say that ultimately intentional Me'ilah is Misa? So Rabbi Abba Gamar Chet Truma. Zir Shava of Chet from Truma. It says Chet ultimately by Me'ilah. It says Chet by Truma. Mal Halon B'Nisa, just like by Truma. And again, both sides. All the cases of Truma are a Kohen who's coming partaking of Truma. That's the case of Truma. So just like by Truma, there's the chiyuv misa b'dei shemayim. After misa, so too over here by case of intentional me'ilah, there'll be misa b'dei shemayim as well. The Rabbanon Amri. The Rabbanon on the other hand say no. Rabbanon Amri. Amar Kra Bo v'lo b'me'ilah. The Rabbanon say once again, when is there or where is there misa b'dei shemayim? That'll be the case ultimately again if the Kohen who goes ahead and intentionally does the avodah in a state of tumah, but the Ma'aseh not is it b'me'ilah. And I will say once again, the Rambam passes like the Chachamim. Again, actually, the Marmot for that, the English part for that is on Amud Aleph. The Rambam on yesterday's daf, Pei Amud Aleph. The Rambam passes like the Chachamim that if a person intentionally goes there and violates me'ilah, and it is not Misa B'dei Shemayim, instead it is Ilah. It is a prohibition. Incredible. All right, so let's now back to the Mishnah. Zar Sheshimish B'Mikdash. Remember, again, I will say this was Shabbos' daf, right? So the Mishnah said this was the end of Pei Aleph on the days. Zara Sheshimish B'Mikdash. If a non-Kohen intentionally, right, serves in the base of Mikdash, Rabbi Akiva or B'Chenek, the Chachamim Omer B'dei Shemayim. Rabbi Akiva says Chenek, strangulation, and the Chachamim say it's Misa B'dei Shemayim. Either way, not good. But L'maisa, again, my focus as to what the punishment is. So let's analyze. Tanya, Rabbi Shmuel Omer, Ne'amar Kan, V'azar HaKorev Yumas, V'ne'amar L'halon, Kol HaKorev El Mishkan Hashem, Yomos. So we'll say, so that we mark over here, so Rabbi Shmuel, use Brisa, Rabbi Shmuel says as follows. On one hand it says, V'azar HaKorev Yumas. So this is talking about the non-Kohen does the avodah. Then the Gemara calls the second pasuk. What's the second pasuk? Kol HaKorev El Mishkan Hashem Yomos, in Tamdu L'Gvoa. So again, this is actually talking about by Adas Korach. But again, in any event, the Gemara quotes another pasuk, and it says, "Whoever comes close to the Mishkan Hashem, Yomos, will die." Mal Halon B'dei Shemayim, just like by that second pasuk, it's talking about B'dei Shemayim. Now Rashi points out over here. Look at Rashi. Mal Halon. Rashi is right across from Tosos Elo. Mal Halon B'dei Shemayim. T'memasayim v'chamishim ish dekorach b'sruf miksiv. Remember again, this is by the 250 followers of Korah who were killed, were incinerated. By right is when they brought the Torah. So they were killed Misa B'dei Shemayim. So interestingly enough, Rabbi Shmuel is making a Gzera Shava. It says by a non-Kohen who does the avoda yamos v'azara karev, or I should say yumas, and it says by adas korach kol hakarev hakarev al mishkan Hashem yamos. Now they were also zarim; they were non-Kohen who did the avoda, so they were killed. Ma'ala halon, just like by Korach, b'dei shemayim, they were killed by Hakadosh Baruch Hu. Afkan b'dei shemayim, still to over here it's mis b'dei shemayim. And therefore, again, this Rabbi Shmuel's raya that if a non-Kohen does the avoda in the Beis Hamikdash, he is killed with mis b'dei shemayim. I Rabbi Kiva says no. Ne'amar kan ba'azara karev yumas, ve'ne'amar lahalon v'hadavi hahu o cholev hachalom hahu yumas. So we'll say interesting. He makes a different Gzeir Shabbat. It says by the non-Kohen who does the avoda yumas, and it says by the Navi. This is the false prophet. The false prophet. These are individuals who try to go ahead and get Klal Yisrael to worship avodah zarah. So the pasuk says you must by them as well. And therefore what? Just like by the Navi, by the false prophet. Ma'ala halon b'skila, afkan b'skila. Just like the false prophet is killed with skila, so too the Zar who does the avodah is also killed with skila. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says no. Ma'ala halon b'chenek, afkan b'chenek. Now Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri disagrees. In other words, he's disagreeing with Rabbi Akiva about the death penalty for the false prophet. Whereas Rabbi Akiva says it's skila, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri holds that it's chenek. But either way, what we're going to do is we're going to build a Gzeir Shabbat between false prophets, between the Navi, between the false prophet, and the non-Kohen who does the avodah. So again, according to Rabbi Akiva, that's going to result in the punishment of skila, and according to Rabbi Yochanan, it's going to result in the punishment of chenek. So the Gemara says, by the way, by my commitment, Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Akiva. So first of all, before the first machlokes is between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva, right? Rabbi Shmuel is making the Gzeir Shabbat of Ba'azara Karev Yumas, and he's comparing it to the followers of Korach. Just like the followers of Korach were killed Nisim B'dei Shemayim, so too again the Zar, the non-Kohen who does the avodah, is also killed Nisim B'dei Shemayim. Rabbi Akiva disagrees. Rabbi Akiva compares the Zar to the false prophet. Just like the false prophet is killed with skila, so too the Zar is killed with skila. So it says, Gemara, what's their machlokes? For my commitment, Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Akiva. We'll say first white line on the bottom, page 84a. Rabbi Akiva suffered done in yumas mi yumas. Ve'in done in yumas mi yamos. Oh, Rabbi Akiva says like this. However, if you're making Gzeir Shabbat, let's do it right. How do you make a Gzeir Shabbat? With two identical words. So the word is yumas. It says yumas by Zar, and it says yumas by the false prophet. By Adas Korach, by the followers of Korach, the lashon of the pasuk is yamos, not yumas. Rabbi Akiva says I'd rather make a Gzeir Shabbat with identical words. Rabbi Shmuel says, done in hedyot mi hedyot, then done in hedyot mi navi. Rabbi Shmuel on the other hand says, no, it's better to make a Gzeir Shabbat between the Zar and ultimately Adas Korach. Why? Because they were both ordinary people. As opposed to the Zar and the Navi again is a chashuv guy. It's a chashuv guy, right? Remember again, the only way the false prophet gets any kind of what's the word, like legitimacy is if somehow he's proven himself as a guy, Rabbi, as a big guy. So therefore, Rabbi Shmuel will say better to learn out ordinary people from ordinary people. So the Zar from Adas Korach, and not learn out the Zar from the Navi. To which the Gemara says, Rabbi Akiva, Kevin Shediach in the Hedyot Gadol is incredible. Rabbi Akiva says, well, maybe this Navi once upon a time was a big deal. But once he's now trying to convince Jews to worship idolatry, there's no more ordinary of a person than this. Very, very profound. Very profound. So the Gemara says like this. So it's almost as if Rabbi Akiva is saying to a certain degree, it's like your identity and your status cannot simply be based on past accomplishments. Your identity and your status is fundamentally tethered to what you are here and now. Incredible you saw it. So the Gemara goes on. So by the way, now we understand that we have a fundamental machlokes ultimately between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva. Fine. Now, but in actually the false prophet himself is machlokes Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Akiva says skila, Rabbi Yochanan says chenek. So what's going on over here? To which the Gemara says, what's their machlokes? The Gemara says, Michael Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Yochanan. Their argument, their machlokes is the machlokes Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbanan. What's their machlokes? The sanyo Navi shediach b'skila. If the Navi tries to convince people to worship idolatry, he's killed with skila. Rabbi Shimon Rabbi Chenek. Rabbi Shimon says no, chenek. So the Gemara says ha'an. The Gemara says Rabbi Shimon Rabbi Chenek. Ha'anan tanan Rabbi Akiva Rabbi Chenek. But one second, we have on record that Rabbi Akiva also says chenek. So you just said before that Rabbi Akiva holds that a Navi who tries to convince people to do idolatry ultimately is killed by skila. They had Rabbi Akiva's on record in the Mishnah saying that it's a chiyuv chenek. Straight to my Rabbi Akiva. Truth is my focus. Rabbi Akiva said two different tanoim. One tanos and Rabbi Akiva holds that a false prophet is chayiv skila, and one opinion said Rabbi Akiva holds that he's chayiv chenek. Masnisim Rabbi Shimon Rabbi Akiva. Meister Rabban Rabbi Akiva. Okay, our Mishnah reflects the view of Rabbi Shimon's understanding of Rabbi Akiva. And the Bryce reflects the Rabbanon's view of Rabbi Akiva. Incredible. So I will say, halacha l'maisa, how do we pass this? In this last case over here, last case, the Rama passes like the Chacham. So they can stand goes ahead and does the uphold in the base of the halacha l'maisa, he is chayiv nisa b'dei. Okay, I will say, hajj l'alach Elohim al-Safin, Mazel Tov. Now we begin on the base, we got on the base. Okay, so now what we are really doing is we are moving Baruch Hashem, through the various missiles based. Now Mishnah says, these are the individuals who get connected. I was already in the scope of training.
Walking out, I just touched her shoulder, just trying to be nice. And then I went on with what I was doing, and I turned around, and she was just sitting there staring at me. And I was like, okay, bitch, keep walking. I was trying to be nice. I was trying to be nice, bitch.
Again, we'll get more into this later on. So remember, so who gets connected? Again, we'll talk more about the actual story of connecting. Who gets connected? When is there connect liability? I'm not getting believe. I want a person who takes his father or something. Don't make nefesh mitzvah, kidnap someone. Zakim mami al pigazim. So we're going to talk about this, about Zakim mami al pigazim. This Zakim is the method. If you have a situation like Daisy rules,
so busy up there, I've been hanging out with
particular judges in the minority.
also
And I'm going to get the way that it works. What happens if you have a judge who refuses to yield to the majority? He refuses. That's helping something.
There's an Estonian comedian that's annoying.
So again, everybody is put to death with friends. Again, we're not that way. No, yes, right? False prophets, which again, interestingly enough, hasn't been just learned before.
I'm trying to even think about what I've even been doing out there
and ultimately killed with connect. It's not a mission of all this stuff.
Not a lot.
Some of the practice on this
What have you been doing in the
green
green room while we've been taping the show?
The zone made Basco.
William, how's life been going for you? What have you been not good?
The zone Basco, remember, they had this case, a lot of myself.
It's not funny, no, not good. I gotta snap out that I was in the fucking row
What
machine in
happens
3
is,
weeks.
Russell, like we call Russell's the
What made you
best
stop rowing?
witnesses show
My
up, witnesses
sciatic
show
nerve,
up,
and
and
I was
they think
worried I
that
was
Russell's
gonna
the
just stop doing it. Now I just stopped doing it. So
Now
I gotta
to
get
get the
back.
two
I'm
witnesses
in
for
fucking
illumination.
been in it for 3
Impossibly,
weeks now,
United
so I
States
just
Russell,
gotta get out
Peter
there.
Bostry, why?
I've been on
Because at
fucking
the time
eBay.
you're seeing this shit,
I
and
bought
it results
all
in
the
you with
fucking
us. You
Oreo
know how
rugs.
you
I
do
got
with us.
literally fed in my place,
That
and
was
I
just
want
now,
to
generally
lamps. Now I'm
again,
buying a bunch of
so even
lamps
so
on
we get
fucking
a ship
eBay,
of
but I'm a little
punishment.
worried because I got this really cool kind of old
I
school
love how
like
nice it's just like they
ashtray,
wanted to
and I
be
got
first
the
straight
package
up.
finally
So
arrived today,
today
but
she
it's
gets
broken.
it, but we'll
What did
see
you
it.
buy
We'll
for
see
me?
this
We're
morning
fucking
tomorrow.
friends.
But we'll
Yeah, you
discuss
can go
the
to Nick
idea
Rochefort's
that we're
antique
actually
store
sitting
and Shabbat.
that is going to
Fucker,
pass
you
time to
told me, no, you don't have very
the
good
English
looking
women
rugs.
don't
I
get
looked
to
at your
around what do
fucking
they get?
rugs.
They get cast. Same idea, bar up. Same thing,
This
the
great
man
rug,
is a virtue of the last one. He also put together, now it's the safer unique for her, rather than getting
And he went on fucking
okay,
eBay.
incredible.
Yeah, I got on fucking eBay and they smell like shit. They smell like shit.
So how do you
They
know
smell
that one
moldy. I should
kiss,
have bought one. What kind of lamps have you bought off
express the
eBay?
father or their mother,
Oh my gosh, I
but I
got
love
one
what
that
I
looks
said,
like a duck.
okay, so that's
Brass looking
incredible.
duck.
Everyone's
I've
got
got
okay,
a
where do you know
one
this
that looks
said,
like
not
another
your
oriental.
other
It's
one
an
more
oriental
famous.
thing. It's
Plus
a,
it
it
says
looks
if you
like
get your
a,
father or your mother, you put to death.
it's some sort of cookie jar.
All these I'm looking for a stamp. Ain't no
Yeah,
elephant.
I gotta
And in
get a,
general, it's
gotta
actually
get a
very
lamp
interesting.
shades.
In
I've been
general,
looking on this
whenever
lamp
the
shade
Torah gives you
website. That's
unqualified
real kind of
death,
boring. I
whenever
mean,
the
they
Torah says
got
you put to death,
different kind of lamp
doesn't
shades. They got
give
ones
a
that kind
specific
of
type
look
of
like a
death penalty.
cylinder.
The default is kind of, you see that before one.
They also got ones with like
The default is
small
kind of,
top.
I, the Gemara says, Emo, I, the Kotale Mikdo.
Yeah, what else? What other parts do they have? I don't know. They're all getting ready to make something up there. It's getting lamps, like spherical.
And kill them. Otherwise, a person get their parents and
There's
kill their
also
parents. That's what is the death penalty.
fiber
In which the
optic
Gemara says,
stuff.
Sagalite, Koto, had decided
Yeah,
for
I'm
ugly,
getting
the
fiber
other
optic
So
out in my
here's
apartment.
the problem. The problem is that what does that mean?
Sorry, yeah, it's just so boring. It's
Now, the Gemara is operating under the assumption that Chenek is considered to be more lenient form of death. What that's going to say is, if you kill a stam person, a regular person, much longer, you're executed by stam, a more common form of death. If you kill your parent, you're trying to Chenek, right? If you kill a parent from a new form of death, what does that mean? One second. When you kill a number of Chenek cow, now that's fine if you understand that Chenek in general is a more lenient form of death penalty. However, I'm not Chenek, I'm on negative anymore. But if you say the Chenek is more common, then what is there? Allah, listen, so just trying to figure out over here, here's what I know. Pasuk says, if you take your mother and father, you put to death. Stam unqualified death penalty is Chenek. Well, trying to figure out over here, what does it mean you hit them? You hit them and you injured them, or you hit them and you killed them? Which we must be very interesting. Allah made it say, not get ish hameis most students. It says, okay, anybody called the adult hayamos. So also, it's very interesting. Look at other things that the person said. And notice he was treating you roughly before he used it. Right? Not the ish hameis. If a man hits his fellow and the other person dies, then the hitter is put to death. Or, okay, anybody called, it's someone animosity. Right? You know, always there, right? Hayamos, and he dies. If you notice, what do you see? You see that there's a qualifier. Pasuk says, and will they hit Shimon, what happened? Shimon died. So there's a qualifier. It indicates to us what? None know. So the fact that there needs to be a qualifier. Will they hit Shimon and Shimon died indicates to us that in the stand case, where it just says Ruvain hit Shimon. And what does that mean? That means hitting without death. Hitting without death. Incredible. So the Gemara says, so now what I have over here is fine. So now, we're just doing this first one. Remember, we're just doing this whole time. We got who's liable to Chenek. First case, person hits his father or his mother. Where I know you're from. Not the other people most people. Person hits his father or mother. That's what I'm killing them. Because if it's killing them, it would have said Makeh Vayamas. The fact that it just says Makeh is just hitting with the finger. And what's that? Look on most you must. When Torah gives you an unqualified death penalty, that automatically means Chenek. So you've proven his first one in the appeal. You've got to watch it. Now, by the way, the Mikvah, make sure the Mikvah will Makeh Nefesh. That's interestingly enough, the Torah says there seems to be two redundant secrets. On one hand, it says Makeh Ish Vameis Nefesh. You hit someone and they die. You'll be put to death. And then it says the Makeh Nefesh. Right, the philosophy is the Makeh Nefesh, if you again, like, you know, church how it says. So it says, if you kill a Nefesh, so it says, right, it says, Makeh Ish Vameis, if you hit an Ish, a man, and he dies, you're put to death. And then it says, Makeh Nefesh, which seems like if you kill a person, you're put to death. Why do you both of those psukim? So most of this is fascinating. Because of Rahman and Makeh Ish Vameis, if the Torah would have just said, Makeh Ish, if you kill that Ish means a man. If you kill a man, you're put to death. I would have thought like this. Havamina, Ish, Debar Mitzvahim, Kacharo. I would have thought like this. When are you liable for killing someone? When you kill a man. Why? Because a man is liable to a whole bunch of mitzvahs. So it makes perfect sense. Kacharo. If you kill a child, you're not liable. You're not liable, right? The child's not having mitzvahs. Therefore, Makeh Nefesh. Different Torah says, no, what is Nefesh? Nefesh means anyone, right? Any living thing. So you can have some kill a child, you're also trying to listen to this. Because of Rahman, Makeh Nefesh, the Torah would have just said, Makeh Nefesh. I would have thought like this, Havamina, Afilu is fallen. Afilu ben Shmona. I would have thought that even if you kill a fetus, right? Whether this is zero, right, or a fetus that has not yet been proven to be viable, or a baby was born after 8 months. Now, the Gemara operates under the assumption that a baby born in 8 months is a non-viable baby. It's not going to live. So I would have thought that you would be hiding to killing even a fetus that's not proven to be viable, or a fetus in utero, or a baby born in the 8th month. The Gemara says, therefore, it's tzrichi. So everyone says, if I love my baby both. So interestingly enough, so Makeh Nefesh teaches me I'm chayiv for going ahead and killing all viable things, right? In other words, I say differently. Really, I need both, right? Because if it would have just said Makeh Ish, I would have thought just adults. Therefore, it says Kol Nefesh. But if it just said Kol Nefesh, I would have thought any living thing, even if it's not viable, Kamashal, you're only chayiv if you kill a viable entity. Therefore, the Gemara says you need both of them. You need both of them. The Ema, Afagablo, Abadeshamura. Went back to parents. So now we've established, I love on myself. If a person goes ahead and hits his parents constitutionally, maybe I should be liable, even if I hit my parents and don't cause an injury. I don't cause a wound. The Gemara says, just for the act of hitting, there should be a death penalty. But 1 second, Alamatzan, we learned, if you hit your mother or father, you're not chayav until you cause an injury. It's very interesting. If a person, let's say, smacks his parent, and there's no injury, there's no chabura, there's no injury. So again, obviously not good, but not chayav misa. The only chayav misa because of chabura. To which we must say, Makia Adam or Makia. How do you know this? If you understand over here, then Makia Adam, this means literally hitting one's parents, and every high connect, maybe it just means even if you hit them without an injury. How do you know that in order to be liable death penalty for hitting one's parent, you have to cause bodily harm? How do we know that? This is very interesting. Amakar, the pasuk says, Makia Adam or Makia Behema. The pasuk supposes one who injures a person and who injures an animal. Just like if you injure an animal, there's only liability if you cause an injury, like you have to cause a wound. Like you go and you slap a cow, all right, it's weird, but Lamaisa, you're not chayiv, there's no penalty, there's no monetary compensation for that. Just like Makia Behema, you're only chayiv if you cause an injury. So the juxtaposition, Makia Adam, you're also only chayiv for striking a person if you cause an injury. Incredible. The Gemara says, I'm sorry, Ma Makia Behema ad Avid Bachamura, the Tzibah Nefesh, Makia Adam ad Avid Chavura. So to again, there's only liability for striking one's parents if one causes an injury. So also, it's incredibly important. So what the Gemara is suggesting over here is that some person strikes their parent, obviously bad, but not a death penalty unless of course you strike them and cause some type of injury. So I'm asking for Rabbi Yirmiyah, so here is 1 second. If that's the case, that we're jumping out to animal, but you're only liable for injuring an animal if you're not because of chabura, cause a wound. If that's the case, let's say I go over to Ruben's animal and I roll Ruben's animal up with a whole load of stones. So I'm not physically injuring the animal, but I'm diminishing its strength. You're going to tell me that there's no liability because there's no physical wound. How can that make the law mechayiv? Are you going to say I'm not chayiv? Of course I'm going to be chayiv. Why? Because at the end of the day, I actively diminished the value and the strength of the animal. So you see, you're able to eat my animal if you don't cause a physical injury or chayiv. Hello. So if that's the case, I don't really need nefesh. I don't really need nefesh behema. And makia or makia behema, right? It says nefesh, right? The nefesh process, by the way, is makia nefesh behema. So I don't really. This is interesting. I don't need nefesh behema to teach me that I have to cause an injury. Why? Because by an animal, the truth is, even if you don't cause an injury, but you clearly do something that substantially diminishes the power of the animal, you're going to be chayiv. So if I don't need nefesh behema to teach me about animal injury, then what? So use it for nefesh adam. Use it for nefesh adam. So therefore, what I need hekesh. So therefore, it turns out interestingly enough that the way we're learning this out, ultimately again, is from nefesh behema. Right? The Maka nefesh will teach me that even by a person, I'm only chayiv if I injure. Right? If I hit my parents, I'm only chayiv if I actually cause bodily harm. Now, if a person just hits or slaps and there's no subsequent bodily harm from that, then Allah said there's not a death penalty involved in that. So if that's the case, so then what I need the hekesh between nefesh behema or makia adam what was the Russian? Right. Makia nefesh. No, I'm sorry. Makia adam makia behema. Right. So what? Now, obviously, the pasuk juxtaposes injuring an animal and injuring a person. So what does that juxtaposition teach me? This is very interesting. This is fascinating. I'm sorry. So therefore, what is the hekesh? Makia behema, makia adam. So what is the juxtaposition of injuring a person, injuring an animal? What does that teach me? The first thing Gemara says is comes to teach me the ruling of the Bechizkiah. What's the ruling of the Bechizkiah? Let's take a look at Rashi as well. We actually had this before in the Gemara. The Chiddusan using the Chizkiah. Baba Kamal liftor chayvim misos shogi b'yinas hashomim mamakim elo chalakta. So what's very interesting? So the Bechizkiah says like this. the Chizkiah holds, we know there's a concept of kinei b'drabim, right? Which means that halacha, if you do something that generates capital liability, you are exempt from any financial liability. But the Chizkiah holds like this: even if you do something b'shogeg, if it's the kind of act that had you done it b'nezid, you would be exempt from financial liability. Even if you do it b'shogeg, you're exempt from financial liability. Okay, and they will learn it out from that hekesh. The Gemara says that's fine, but that's fine if you hold like Tanakh Bechizkiah. Elaman the less they Tanakh Bechizkiah hekeshalamoi. But if you don't hold of the Tanakh Bechizkiah, which many don't, in other words, we'll say many reject that concept, and they say the only time that you're patur from monetary compensation is when you are liable to a death penalty. But if you did something b'shogeg and if we're not liable to death, you are liable to pay. So if you reject that limud, then what do you do with the hekesh? Not in remember again, just to understand, we're just trying to figure out that we have a positive structure, but we're just injuring the person, injuring an animal. So what do I need that for? For which we must listen to this. Just like what happens if Ruben's animal is injured and I'm trying to help Ruben's animal, and I end up injuring the animal. So if I injure the animal in the context of trying to heal it, there's no liability. So the Gemara brings out the juxtaposition the same thing with a person. If I'm trying to help someone and I end up injuring them, I'm not liable for that injury. That's the juxtaposition. So the Gemara says, we buy level. Then, listen to this case. Then, Mount Yakish Gamra'ad. Let's listen to this. Let's say again, let's say we have a father Avram, and Avram has a son Yitzchak. And Avram is ill, and he needs bloodletting. You remember again, bloodletting is the preferred manner of all medicinal healing. And now, Yitzchak wants to help his father. What's the problem? What did we just say? That if the son injures his father, right, he's drawing blood of son injuries, I kind of. But here, the son's intention is not to injure his father, it's the opposite. His intention is to help. So is he allowed to do this or not? So the Gemara says, but Master Amar says, yes, it is permitted. Why? Again, you see another year to help them out, especially if that idiot is your father. What's the child? Of course, you know, Rabbi Bakinina Amar, Make Adam Umake Behim. If I write Rabbi Bakinina says, the juxtaposition, so it says, Make Adam Make Behim, the juxtaposition, he teaches us what? Just like if you injure an animal in the course of trying to help, in the course of trying to do is your partner, not to Adam, you're a partner. So if you injure someone in the course of trying to heal them, you are partner as well. So everyone will say, it's interesting, both of these opinions are agreeing, namely that a son is permitted to go and do bloodletting on his father, even though he's going to quote unquote injure him. But since the injury is for medicinal purposes, therefore it is going to be incredible. So we'll say, this by the way, this you should know, we'll do this more on Wednesday, but this sugya is a fascinating sugya because again, let's say again, a son is a doctor, he wants to treat his father, he's about to treat his father. Or again, a child is a nurse and wants to draw blood. Or just even not a nurse, a child is caring for a parent, right, and wants to go ahead, test blood sugar, or different things like this. Is a child allowed to do these things for a parent, knowing that essentially they're doing a kabura, they're quote-unquote injuring the parent, even though the injury is not for injury purpose. The injury is ultimately for fuah, but is a child allowed to do it or not? Now, both of the opinions mentioned here seem to indicate the answer is yes. It's just a shayla. First opinion says, of course it's permitted. We have to hakamocha. Second opinion learns out from the hakesh, the comparison between makdad and makdad. But listen to this. You must say, Rav, lo shavik librei le mishkavei silu. So Rab would not allow his son to remove a splinter from his hand. Right? So if Rab got a splinter, he would not let his son remove the splinter. Why not? Because again, it could cause an injury. So similarly, again, the son of Ravina would not allow his son to literally open up a boil. Why not? Because if he would do it, he would do it, or if he wanted to lance the boil, open up the boil to get the pot. He wouldn't do it. Why? Because if his son would perhaps be a little bit too aggressive, he could cause an injury beyond the boil. So this is fascinating. So two great rabbanim who would not allow their children to help them, taking out a splinter, lancing the boil, because it's concerned that it could cause a kabura. You must 1 second. If that's the concern, that someone may end up injuring someone and trying to help them, that it's not just given the son, then no one else should be able to go out and land to the boil, take out the splinter. Someone else should also not be permitted to take out the splinter or land to the boil. To which the Gemara says, no. Acher shigagasla.
Yo, what up? How are you, big dog?
Here's the big difference.
Good, man.
Someone else.
Shalom, what's good, son?
Okay, it's a lot. It's a lot. And it's
Everything, man.
Excellent. Dude, just living life. How'd you find out about me? Please remind me.
So on one hand, the Gemara asks, the son allowed his son to injure his father.
An anime server? Okay, very well. Did you watch the... Cool. Did you watch the Super Bowl?
Yet again, you see Rabbi not allowing his son to take out this one. Rabbi not allowing his son to allow the boy. So again, we're gonna stop over this.
Are you kidding me? They had like a whole dedication to Latin America. The entire halftime show was in Spanish. Dog, I had an Australian in here. You know the Australian, there's going to be an NFL game in Melbourne next year? All right. Very well. All right. What about the Winter Olympics? Do you know that there are 56 Australian athletes competing?
And causes physical injury.
You're into all the Olympics.
Baby, I'm into everything cool.
I'm into finances, money, and politics.
All right, well, I'm into. All right, well, I'm into everything, baby, and that shit's cool too. All right, have you been on Twitter Spaces recently? Yes or no? Go.
No.
Why not?
So I also want to thank you for the sponsorship info. Will be listed in Answer Shut.
All right, I mean, it's something you can listen to. You don't have to, like, do anything, but it's 24/7 Web3 discussion. Are you into cryptocurrency?
About 14 lines up from the bottom and 2 dots.
All right, well, and you're not in the Web3 Twitter Spaces?
I just don't know.
Okay, but what about like meme coins or
I used to play with meme coins, especially on the Trump launch season. But I noticed that it was a bit too speculative. It's not really like something I did that use.
So what's the
okay, what kind of business do you run? Oh, very cool. You have a big heart.
I think it's about like I run the business. It wasn't really my money.
Very well. Do you know what raw comedy is? Dog, it's Australia's biggest open mic competition. Man, you don't know anything about Australia. No, I'm just busting your balls. Do you not know what raw comedy is, though? Dog, you gotta get on board. It's Australia's biggest open mic competition. Do you know what comedy is? Who's your favorite Australian comedian? Okay, who's your favorite American comedian? That's hilarious that you think. But okay, excellent. Do you know who James McCann is? He's from Adelaide.
I didn't know he was a
Yeah, I know. I'm having to teach you about your own country.
if somebody went ahead and violated prohibitions,
You're gonna say it's that way, right?
I mean, am I not? Am I not? I'm over here teaching you that you have 56 Olympians in the Winter Olympics. I'm teaching you. Do you know about the JJJ? The music radio.
Here's a perfect case.
You know about
Fuck yeah.
Nothing. See, here's the case of our Kodesh Baruch Hu.
So I'm not saying like there's funny influence like
No, that's not a good right.
That's not shit. Have you seen the anti-trade?
I saw he got his ass whooped.
Remember how we defined that case? What case of Malchus is that this is a person who committed
influence on some sort of
he violated the same
There you go. Do you like UFC?
Now, for Kares, Bezdin doesn't execute the person, but Bezdin does give Malchus.
UFC.
The person is deserving of
I used to follow UFC.
he's a repeat offender in the
All right. All right, very well. Are you excited for the White House UFC event, July 4th?
Maybe it's just a dream of a game, so they're trending or something.
Dog, I'm into everything cool. I'm into everything cool.
But yet again, we killed the guy, or kind of.
Really? What about
what do you see from here?
the
Even
guy that got
Case,
kidnapped
Dog, Nickel, the guy from Venezuela. Yeah. What about him?
Remember again, that case was different because
Yeah, dog. We've known this for a long time.
So remember again, here's an example.
It's arguable. We basically kidnapped their leader and staged a coup, and now we're running that country.
We did that to Chile as well, right?
We've done it to essentially every Central and South American government. Yeah, we basically have large corporations that want the resources of those places. They come in, they change the leadership, they put in some puppet leader, and that puppet leader does everything that the United States says. We're done. All right. So, yeah, I mean, we're all related. We're all related. There are over 3,000 of us in the United States alone, thousands of us globally. It's a pretty common name within the Ashkenazi Jewish community. It's like having the name Kennedy as an Irish person.
And you know the main Rothschild
Baby, they're a part of me.
Now, Rav Shishis responded. Rav Shishis said the answer is obviously. The answer must be no. So,
By DNA.
I'm sorry. The answer must be yes. Because the Mishnah said
I have familial connections. That's even closer.
Then Halacha Maisa, Pirkei Kuna are allowed to take him out and beat him to death.
And what are you doing streaming?
Baby, this is the biggest event in global history. I don't work. All my food's taken care of for me. I'm financially independent. I mean, what more do you want me to do?
Someone who
I guess he can kill. I guess he can sense and just do whatever he enjoys.
This is what I enjoy.
Like no one's forcing you to get things right. You're doing it every 3
100%.
Okay, or I should say at least liable to the death. Liable to death at Hanoi.
I could be traveling the world. While I enjoy traveling, I really am a homebody. I like to learn. I like to be entertained. I like to be comfortable more than anything. So I make my time streaming my life 24/7 and meeting new amazing individuals who don't know anything about their own country like you. Now, let me ask you this, my man. I'm just busting your balls. What are your thoughts on Robert Irwin? I'll wait. You don't know who Robert Irwin is? Dog, he's like the biggest celebrity in Australia.
Like I have these people like I don't really connect like
So what's that?
Do you know who Steve Irwin is?
Yeah.
All right, so he has two children. Bindi Irwin, his daughter, and Robert Irwin, his son. Yeah, dog. So just living like a pimp, that's what I'm doing. Going into Twitter Spaces, telling people about what I do. And
I think the world's gonna change in a couple of years.
well, of course it's going to change in a couple of years. Yeah, I know the best investment strategies in the history of humankind. It's called data. Aside from data, though, if you want to make a quick buck really as fast as possible, get into Pump Fund and just whenever a coin is launched, buy it immediately and sell it within like 3 minutes. And you'll essentially every single time make at least like 1 or 2x. And then you just keep doing that. And no, most of them do. Right when they launch, they all go up. And so you just buy them right when they launch, and then you sell them within a minute. It's basically a cheat. It's a cheat code. Yeah, absolutely, it works. Well, yeah, because you didn't sell soon enough. Right?
So this is very interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So basically you say to yourself, I'm going to ape into a coin. I am going to only be in it for 1 or 2 or 3 minutes until it 1x's, 2x's, 3x's. Then I'm going to get out. And so you just have to be happy with taking small exactly, but that adds up very, very quickly. It's a cheat code, dog. Dog, I know all the cheat codes. Again, data. Data is the biggest cheat code of them all. Data is more valuable than petroleum, dog. Train AI with it?
So again,
you know about AI? I mean, you know how valuable AI is, right? Well, in 2018, The Economist magazine stated that data, specifically human data, overtook petroleum as Earth's #1 resource.
Failure to do so.
So, I mean, how much money do you want to make?
I didn't invest into data because I know
again,
a lot of it is hidden under private equity.
Dog, you create your own data.
Failure to do so results in
yeah, dog. So you basically recognize that human data is the most valuable asset in the world. And you create your own. You basically generate your own human data and recognize that it will be extremely valuable in the future. It's the #1 resource on Earth. It's more valuable than gold, silver, oil, cryptocurrency. Human data is #1. It's more valuable than water. It depends how much of it. It depends how much of it you have. There's another person in here He recognizes it. His name's Spirit Man. Spirit Man live streams his life 24/7 on YouTube. He's been doing it for like 300 days. There's a lot of value in that data. I've been doing it 24/7 for like 1,500 days. There's a lot of value in that data.
But if it's bifnim,
But
there would be
how do you get that value to be monetized?
The different social media platforms pay. The different social media platforms pay. They pay you for it.
But you're not selling your data, right? Are you selling your data?
No, you still own it.
The answer seems to be a resounding.
So
But meaning they collect data from you and then they run ads to sell you. And then like the companies that run ads pay the big social media platforms for your views and your data.
right, and then you get paid from that.
Rashi says over here, Elazar Nami,
Oh, like a social media influence.
the issue over here is, remember,
Yeah, I mean, but you have to recognize views can make you money. The data itself can make you money. Endorsements can make you money. There are multiple profit streams from this. It's not just one profit stream. That's what makes it so valuable.
The Pasuk says explicitly that a non-Kohen engages in sacrificial service against the
I think that some people are bring more value than others against this kind of thing. Like I can see, he seems like he's doing very well, even though he's young.
Of course.
People watching him.
Well, no, that's not necessarily true. A lot of influencers bot themselves. In fact, the majority of influencers bot themselves so that they have what's considered a larger audience, and then they get more money from it. But the number one job in the United States that a young person wants to be is an influencer, and that is now the number one job as a global desired career. It used to be athlete. It used to be like football player or basketball player or soccer player. It's no longer. Influencers taken over. You can do whatever you want. You can talk about whatever you want. Literally, whenever you turn on the camera, money starts to get generated. It's like a free money glitch. Yeah, or whatever. I mean, like I'm sponsored by a cryptocurrency that's worth about $100 million. All I have to do is wear their shirt, which costs me nothing. I'd have to wear a shirt anyway, and have their pillows and comforter and stuff, and I generate money.
Do you want to say
Do you mind if I ask, like,
the conclusion of the Gemara is
Enough.
that halacha lemaisa, if a person, the Kohen does the avodah in a state of tumah, he is chayiv misa b'dei shamayim. Which now, by the way, if we take that approach,
I've thought about the system makes sense. Organic traffic where you're generating and there's page
so you can't bring him to days, right? Like,
you can monetize page traffic. It's a lot of skill. But these are skill.
They don't. All you have to no. I disagree with you on that. What it takes is consistency. Consistency is the key.
The consistency. Yeah.
I mean, if you want to consider consistency as skill, I agree with you there. You could be someone who has 1 million views on one video, which is fine. You can monetize that. But what's much more valuable is 1,000 views over the course of a year. And you might say, but why? Because you have a lot more content over if you create an entire year's worth of footage for people of the future to be able to study. Absolutely. Like, let's take it like this. You could have like data is very important. Like in the past, okay, let's put it like this. People in the past would write journals and diaries, and they would say like what the weather was like and what was going on in the world, and they would talk about their passions and their dreams. And you could have perhaps 100 pages of a really famous person, which is valuable, or you could have a lifetime journal of someone with maybe 10,000 pages worth of journals, and maybe they might not be famous immediately, but the fact that they had so much content over the course of their life becomes the backbone of many of our history interpretations. Like they're able to shape history due to their words. Maybe they weren't president, or maybe they weren't the king of England.
There's a whole lady that recorded like every single TV podcast.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. From the 1970s until the late 20s, like the late noughts, and so for like 30 years, and that's become the backbone of the global television archive. And she worked for Apple Computer, and she and her family basically used the funds that she made from Apple to be able to take on this project. And now the reason why much of our video archive exists is because of her. So she may not have made huge amounts of money over the course of her life. She did, though, because she had Apple stock and stuff. She lived comfortably, but in 100 years, she'll be seen as an icon.
The Kohen is lacking, or he's coming.
With AI, you go through all of that video footage and then
That's exactly right. It already can. I can give AI a 12-hour video of mine, and it gives you minute-by-minute timestamps of everything that was going on, an analysis of the language, and summaries. I mean, it's incredibly powerful.
Remember again, Aloha is the first thing when the Kohen comes into the base of Mikdash in the morning. Also, when they come to the base of Mikdash in the morning, they go to the Kira, they go to the big sink.
I just think that it seems like a more like a long, very long okay, pretty low. But who's going to buy the data? Who's going to, you know what I mean? Who's going to buy the data that you use to store?
You have to understand, it's about influence. If you're not live streaming right now yourself, but if you do it for 10 years straight every single day, you'll be a millionaire. Just about guaranteed. If you do it 24/7. And here's why. Because you'll have people who come to you to say, hey, I've seen what you're doing. I like your content. I have this cereal I want you to be a spokesperson of, or this clothing brand I want you to be a spokesperson of, or I want you to drive this car. And you're going to get on podcasts, and you'll get interviews. You will see perhaps exponential growth. You didn't know who Mr. Beast was 10 years ago. You can go back and look at Mr. Beast's first video, which is like in 2014, and he looks much younger, and he's just like, hey, everybody, I'm making a video for myself in 10 years. You do what you need to do, baby. It's your world. I just live in it.
Remember again, if you have any situation now today, we know you're supposed to hemophilia. So we know that again, obviously genetically different. So let's say the Kohen had older brothers who died as a local person. We recognize that now again that there's an issue. It's such a Kohen, it's such a person not able to have the which is fine. It's not just a but he's not allowed to be the apple. But any of these three people really are not allowed to are not allowed to be the apple. So not here needs to be Shemayim, rather again, it'll be allowed. What happens if a blemished Kohen does the apple? What's that law? Rabbi Omer B'Misra, the Chachamim Omrim Ba'as Hara. So Rabbi says, Nisi B'Di Shemayim, the Chachamim say Allah, fascinating. Okay, so again, we'll see all this later on in the Gemara. Yeah, good. Let's say somebody intentionally committed an act of evil. Timur again, illegal misappropriation of temple property. So let's say someone actively, purposely, went ahead and took things properly and used it. Rabbi Omer can use. Rabbi says, the Chum say no, Ba'as Cholet, allowed. How such is? Well, now that's our holders. Now let's dissect this. Number one, the first person in Nisi Shemayim lineup, the first guy in Nisa B'dei Shemayim lineup is also a person who's untied produce. Someone says, no, where exactly do I know that from? Listen to this. How do I know that if someone eats tabal that is chayim yisrael b'dei shamayim, tichsiv lo yichalalu es kodshay b'nei Yisrael asher yarimu la'Hashem. So literally it says, do not profane the consecrated items of the Yisrael that will be raised to Hashem. Future tense. You must be basidim litrom hakosov medada. The Torah is talking about produce that is going to have time removed from it. What's the definition of produce that is going to have time removed from it? Kol tevel. And the Torah says over here, do not go ahead and profane it. Do not go ahead and profane it. And the Torah prescribes the death penalty. So the Gemara says Yoliv as well. Actually, the Torah doesn't prescribe the death penalty. It doesn't have Yoliv. Chilo mitruma. Make it zero shava. It says chilo by tevel, and it says chilo profane by truma.
Yo, what up, baby?
It says chilo by truma. It says chilo by tevel, and you say mala halon b'misa.
Yeah, so you're over here. I'm telling you, like the way to success, and you get it, but you don't. Okay, so 10 years ago, Mr. Beast, well, maybe like 12 years ago, he was worth nothing. He was living in fucking North Carolina, and he had nothing. Now he's a billionaire. He kept up with that dream. And I'm just saying to you, like, you want the easy way. The easy way is creating content.
So why don't you start the lotion of also?
I'm absolutely.
What about AI?
Well, so you have to recognize it's the idea that it is human content that makes it valuable. AI cannot replicate human data. People think of it like this. You know how people pay a lot for handmade things like watches and cars? Like the most expensive cars are the ones that are made by hand. The reason why is because it doesn't involve machines. People are willing to pay a premium for that. It has more value. Additionally, look at art. Like, people could be like, well, art can be created by computers, and it can be, but it's not as valuable as art that's been created by great artists. And the reason why is because people value the human touch, and the same is true with content. Yeah, you can create really cool videos using AI. There's no doubt about that. I think it's great. I do it all the time. However, no machine can recreate your reaction to it accurately. It's not real. And people recognize that. When they know that it's AI generated, they know that it loses, at least to human beings, it loses much of its appeal. That's one of the reasons why people value going to concerts and being able to see the actual artist, as opposed to listening to AI music or computer-produced music. It's because they can connect with the human. And we're at the point where, I mean, if you've heard of the theory, it's known as the dead internet theory. It's where much of the internet has already, for at least the last near decade, been replaced by robots and been replaced with artificial intelligence. And thus, we're moving more and more away from human content, and people long for that. People love that. Look, I can just tell you this right now. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got like 5 different people in this stream who just like being around a human. They could be just live streaming to like some AI model or whatever, but they don't. They like the human connection.
So therefore, again, the Gemara says,